Welcome to the place where your dreams come true at Dreamworld. Currently, this game ranks first in popularity on the web and in game trends. First place in terms of the number of players, the most famous game in all categories, Meet Dreamworld. This is a national game that everyone has played at least once, including actors, bloggers, politicians, and others. Whoever you are, players of all ages and nationalities can be found here. A dark-haired guy creates his character for the first time in the game. Without thinking twice, the player calls himself Carl. In Dreamworld, you can make your dreams come true. Cadence Cook has created a character as similar to himself as possible. The main character was completely immersed in the game. He could play it for weeks without leaving the house. To become the number one that no one can surpass, this is the goal that Cadence has set for himself. And after thousands of hours spent in Dreamworld, he will make his dream come true. Cook took the first position in the rankings. But the game's channel was closed, and the world forgot about Dreamworld for a long time. Today is the release day of Dreamworld 2. The channel was created again. But there was one oddity. The game indicates that the game character is on the ground. Half an hour ago, Cadence had finished the express delivery as usual and was pressing the username selection button to pre-order Dreamworld 2. Suddenly, the elevator stopped so abruptly that the main character lost his balance. The light went out and silence fell. Cook desperately tried to contact the dispatcher, but the emergency call button did not work, and 911 could not be reached. While the young man was waiting for help, or while someone noticed that the elevator was not working, a scoreboard from the game appeared in front of the guy. Cadence couldn't figure out how it worked. Maybe it was a hologram. The scoreboard seemed to exist in the real world. A button stood out on the screen, clearly demanding to press it, and an avid gambler like Cook couldn't help but press it. Upon confirmation, the information on the scoreboard was updated, and the guy had his first task, in which it was reported that the elevator would soon be attacked by parasites. He needed to escape from the closed space. In case of failure of the task, the main character is in danger of death. Suddenly, the elevator was filled with a swarm of cockroaches. They crawled out of all corners. Cook's scream filled the whole building. Cockroaches were everywhere. They were trying to crawl under clothes and into ears. We had to get out urgently. There are 13 seconds left until the end of the performance. The main character coped with his task and was able to leave the crowded elevator. There was a portal behind Cadence, but it doesn't look like cockroaches came from there, so why a portal? Apparently, this is the portal that I opened when I quit the game. Maybe the guy began to think that he was going crazy because of the sudden closure of the game, and he began to have withdrawal syndrome. Suddenly, vague sounds began to come from the portal, driving the protagonist into panic. Too many questions and so few answers. A green goblin-like monster jumped out of the portal. The monster clearly wanted to attack Cook. This cannot happen in reality. The young man began to think that he had begun to hallucinate. The goblin struck the boy. He reflexively surrendered, covering his head. A scream escaped from Cadence's mouth in pain. The monster's blow was real, moreover. Cook took damage from the goblin's attack. His health began to decrease. You need to run, but what will happen if the goblin continues to attack? There is absolutely nothing left for health. One blow can be the last. The green monster was preparing to attack the protagonist again. Cadence was in a panic. The goblin opened his nasty mouth. The guy was sure that he would die, and so his worthless life would end. For a second, the panic receded. The monster is quite small. Although it appeared spectacularly, you need to pull yourself together. Cook was distracted and the goblin struck again, but the guy managed to jump away. One blow and he was finished. He had to run. Cadence saw a staircase. If he ran down it and hit on another floor, then maybe he would be able to escape. The information board blocked the exit to the stairs. Cook was undergoing training and it was impossible to leave the floor. The exit is blocked. There is nowhere to run. It remains either to pull yourself together and fight or die. During this time, the goblin managed to swing and throw his wooden hammer at the main character with all his strength. The monster's weapon flew into the wall, right next to Cadence, death breathing down the protagonist's back. The guy has already resigned himself to the fact that his end has come. Maybe it's just a bad dream. In the morning, he will wake up after a hard night and go to work. Suddenly, a notification popped up about the reward for disconnecting the server. The player's level is not high enough for them. Changes have been made. Cook's body calmed down. There was no more panic. It was the new ability he had just gained. The goblin prepared to attack his opponent again. He no longer looked as scary as he had seemed before. Cadence took his sword. It's an ordinary monster from a F-rank dungeon. If it happened in Dreamworld, the hero would simply ignore him. This means that the chance that Cook will lose is zero, and his health will not drop below a certain level. The goblin is advancing. The guy thought that he initially had an advantage against the monster. It is impossible to die during training. The monster, preparing to strike, decided to jump so that more damage could be done. At this moment, Cadence cold-bloodedly pierced his opponent with his sword. It turned out that it was so simple. The hammer fell out of the hands of a monster. If it's like in the game, then there should be at least 5 goblins. Cook wondered if he could cope with one goblin that had caused him so much fear, if he would be able to defeat several more of the same kind. What kind of stupid thoughts? The main character is obliged to cope. No matter how many opponents, the main thing is to act calmly, deftly, and quickly. The guy mentally prepared for the battle, took his sword and stood up waiting for the enemies. They should get a little closer. With a deft movement of the weapon, Cadence quickly dispatched all the goblins. The task was completed. All the monsters on the 13th floor were destroyed. The main character received the title of Evil Killer. The task turned out to be much easier than it initially seemed. Cook received tattered rags from the killed goblins. This is really a game, but everything happens in reality. Today is the release day of Dreamworld 2. Cadence wondered why he was so calm then, probably because of the upgrade he received for the bonus. It remains to find out if it was the main character who got into the game or the game became a reality. The player decided to check the scoreboard. Since its level is low, only partial use of the celestial body is available. The Tranquility skill is activated. Cook didn't understand why he had acquired a skill that had been earning months last time. Maybe this was the reward for shutting down the server. Dreamworld was another popular game. The reason for its failure was its incredible difficulty. Previously, you had to write a command every time you used a spell, which slowed down its use. Many players left because they could not get used to the mechanics of the game, because only true fans could master it. But the main reason why the game sucked was 3 lives. If you die 3 times, then the character is deleted. That's why there were so few badass players and a huge difference between rankers. Those who entered the top 12 were not considered humans, but were called gods by users. Also known as those above the heavens, they started over many times, and despite the difficulty of the game, they became the strongest. The number 1 ranker was a character named K, that is, Cadence Cook. The guy knew all the tricks of the game like the back of his hand. He started over thousands of times. But 5 years later, the server was turned off and a survey appeared on the main page. There were 3 things to choose that players would like to carry over to Dreamworld 2, and that was the end of the first Dreamworld. However, no one could have thought that the second version of the game would be in this format. No one expected to receive a reward for disconnecting like this. Cadence began to scold himself. If he had known that this would happen, he would have chosen the Mystic item. The Celestial Body allowed you to adapt to battles. At the moment, the skill can be used partially. Related skills are limited. It is not surprising that the sword naturally fell into his hand. And most importantly, Cook began to feel something that he had not felt in the game before. The body was affected by the calmness from the Celestial Body, which meant that the other 2 skills would also be received as a reward. A new task has appeared. The dungeon of the rank F has begun to transform. You need to survive 5-6 waves during which the dungeon is created. The time for the task is 10 minutes. In case of failure, death is threatened. The monster appeared in block 103 because the player is going through the tutorial. The level of the monster is adapted. The goblin boss has already passed through the portal. Cadence needs to fight the enemy and defeat him. A light earthquake began on the living building. Electricity began to work intermittently. The girl was about to go to school. She felt light tremors as she thought, earthquakes. But it was a dungeon. On this day, the girl was not destined to get to the school alive. A huge goblin stood in the way of the schoolgirl. She had never seen such monsters before and had no idea what to do. Goblins began to appear all over the house, in apartments, corridors. People were not ready for such a disaster. Residents of the house ran out of their apartments, looking for salvation, but monsters were everywhere. There was nowhere to hide. A familiar sound was heard everywhere. It had already begun. It was time to start the task. It's very bad if it's like in the game. Cook realized that goblins began to appear everywhere. A lot of people would die. A dungeon is a phenomenon in which the normal zone is hit by crowds of monsters. That was the concept of Dreamworld. People who aren't players can't fight. Monsters cannot leave their floors. If the guy can escape, then he can clear them. To get to another building, you need to get to the roof. Only one ranker is able to save everyone. You need to wait with the roof and stand here to clear this dungeon. Even when training, the boss does not like light, which means he hides in the basement. The only way out is to get to him in 10 minutes. An incomprehensible sound was heard from behind. The main character turned around to look. A portal appeared there. The dark blue portal aroused great interest among the player. He invited him to himself. This is most likely because the monster infestation has stopped. Cook will definitely cope with everything. He has no other choice. He has activated the calmness skill. The guy confidently went towards the unknown and plunged into the portal. The main character found himself in the room of the secret infected seat of nature, which was located in the parking lot. Cadence imagined this place in this way, but hoped that something would change in the second part. Goblins roam the parking lot. It seems that the player hid behind a pole until the monsters noticed him. Apparently, goblins get up through portals. In order to save people, they should be blocked. To do this, you need to kill the boss. It was not difficult to find the Green Hulk. In reality, he is really damn huge. He is more like the one who was shown in the movies. The giant goblin had not yet noticed the player and was wandering aimlessly around the parking lot. Until the dungeon is finished, this place has not become a full-fledged dungeon. In training, until the process is completed, raids are carried out according to a different tactic. Cook waited for time to attack the boss. The timer should drop to 1 minute. Then the monsters get a shortened breath and you can start fighting. An icon appeared above the boss, meaning that you need to attack it. Cook confidently struck the first blow. The shortening of breathing occurs at the last minute before the formation of the dungeon. The player has activated the calmness skill. He cannot panic now. At the last moment before the end of the dungeon, all the monsters begin to breathe heavier. The monster that has become the boss stops. A lot of players took advantage of this and leveled themselves up in this way. The protagonist wasn't sure if it was applicable to the current situation, but there was no other option. First, you need to disorient the small goblins. You need to choose a higher place. The player climbed up and hid behind an overturned car. The monsters lost sight of the enemy and began to look for him. Cook was given the title of Cowardly Assassin, and the monsters' rage increased, and the goblin's ability to assess the situation was weakened. It is necessary to equip yourself in advance. The main character came up with a plan of action. However, the player lost his vigilance. The boss approached too quietly from behind and struck. Cadence managed to dodge. It seemed that the huge goblin's contraction of breathing had ended. Taking a closer look, the main character realized that the boss was moving forcibly. Before he can move again, Cook must finish off the enemy. Cook defeated the boss with one blow. He managed to take advantage of the situation in time. The goblin's head fell on the floor of the parking lot. The training was successfully completed. The weather forecast was on the radio. Cloudiness and a high concentration of fine dust are expected in most of the country. In densely populated cities, there is a strong wind and thick fog in the morning. Due to the high concentration of dust, the presenter recommends that residents of the country stay at home. A morning that was supposed to be just like any other. Today it was different. The catastrophe overtook the whole country, as if an apocalypse passed through the streets. Some 10 minutes changed everything. The incident occurred around 6 in the morning. Starting in Seoul, the center of Korea, later covering the entire country in an instant. Because of this, the internet exploded. All news channels were flooded with information, but all media were deleted. The townspeople, who did not fully believe and were in doubt, only talked about the situation. In the dressing room, the girl recognized the graphics of the game. It was clearly Dreamworld. Emily Gibbs, a popular idol, carefully watched videos from the scenes. The girl realized that the dungeon had indeed begun. Gibbs is the best performer and songwriter in the camp. She is called an idol. She is a worldwide star who starred in commercials, dramas, and films. However, Emily, a sweet and innocent girl, has one secret. Suddenly, the process was interrupted by a producer who flew into the dressing room. He anxiously reported that all their plans for today were canceled. They urgently needed to return to the dormitory. Emily jumped up and showed the man a live broadcast of a lizard attacking people. The broadcast is conducted from the Namsan Tower, after which the girl showed a red wyvern in the middle of the city. The producer tried to calm down and alarm Gibbs, but she insisted that Dreamworld had become a reality. The man was sure that the singer was addicted to games and decided to confiscate the phone. Emily's secret was that she was a Dreamworld player, the one above the heavens. This means that she is one of the 12 that all the players looked up to. Among them, the best player who freely used weapons was a rank 12 magic shooter. Even fans did not know about the girl's hobby, so that the idol would not be recognized. She used a voice filter. Gibbs also chose a middle-aged man as her character, but when the game became a reality, there was no need to hide her identity. However, the producer took the phone and put it in his backpack. He did not want to hear about Dreamworld. He claimed that the director could send the girl for rehabilitation. The man just wanted to preserve her reputation. Gibbs asked her to listen, but an earthquake broke out and everything around her began to fall to the floor. The gamer took the opportunity and snatched the producer's phone. They say that if you link a phone to an account, you can get access to items and abilities, just like in the game. The girl first tried to log into her account. She asked the man not to move. Emily Gibbs logged in, gaining access to the account. She became a character in the game. The producer was shocked. He was sure that the girl just made everything up, but the game became a reality. As a reward for connecting, you can equip a magic revolver. From the void right into Emily's hands, a real weapon descended exactly like in the game. While the gamer was admiring her brand new revolver, a portal opened behind her. A nasty monster that looked like a ghoul immediately began to crawl out of it. The heroine was delighted. The monster in life is more vile than in the game. Deciding to try out the weapon, Gibbs pointed her revolver at the monster. One shot would be enough for such a slacker. But there was no shot. The drum was empty. Cold sweat began to run down his face. Emily was puzzled if the weapon wasn't real, why he hadn't fired. The scoreboard showed that synchronization is taking place. You need to wait. The monster was ready to strike. He was very close to the gamer. I had to dodge the ghoul's attacks and run away until the revolver was loaded. Slow loading of the phone almost caused the death of the heroine. Running away from the monster, it turned out to buy some time. Finally, the girl confidently stopped and shot at him. The ghoul's body fell to the floor. The producer could not believe his eyes. He could not understand what was happening and asked for an explanation from the idol. Emily said that the man needed to run away urgently. Now everyone was on their own, and she needed to find one person. Cadence stood in the underground parking lot, staring at the murdered boss. The infected tree of nature failed to go underground. The guy coped with his task. The monster's body began to bubble and then dissolved in the air and flew to the top like a whirlwind. The monster disappeared, but all the damage caused to the building and the blood remained. After completing the task, a new portal appeared. Apparently, the second stage has come. The educational task is a labyrinth of choice, in which you need to go through each stage of the selected difficulty. This is the last part of the training, where the reward will be the ability. It did not end and return to the beginning, as the main character stopped the dungeon. This means that you need to go through the training again. So far, everything is too simple. After passing through the portal, the player found himself in a barely lit room. This place is real, just like the map from the Dreamworld tutorial in the first part. The guy can smell the surroundings and the temperature. This amazed him. The training began, light sources appeared behind him, and Cadence looked around to see. In front of the main character, there are 4 portals, a labyrinth of choice. The last step of the tutorial, after which the player is rewarded with an ability based on the level they have chosen. Even if the ability is the same, it will be F rank for easy difficulty and A rank for hellish difficulty. Usually Cook chose hellish difficulty. The problem is that it is set in such a way that it is impossible to pass it. But there was one player who was able to pass the hellish difficulty, but now the circumstances are different. The scoreboard displayed the number of players in each level, 120 trying to pass on hellish difficulty. The very fact that so many people are being trained means that this phenomenon is happening over a large area. Perhaps not only in Korea but all over the world, Dreamworld has become a reality all over the planet. Many people died. Cook mentally asked the inhabitants of the planet to hold on. First of all, Cadence must worry about himself and only then about others. As a result, the player still chose a hellish level of difficulty. Level 1, the task is to protect the statue of the goddess from golems in a confined space for 5 minutes. In case of failure, Cook will die. The time limit exists only in hellish complexity. Stone golems began to crawl out from everywhere. So far, they can only crawl. After the monsters loaded, they stood up and began to float in the air. The player began to fight. The golems turned out to be weaker than he expected. The main character deftly cut the stone flesh of monsters. It was easy for the guy. The monsters were scattered to pieces throughout the training space. Perhaps it's all because of the celestial body's ability, a surprisingly easy task. But the problems are just beginning. The oxygen level in the dome decreases. The golems become more active. The character's reaction time has been reduced by 0.5 seconds, and the speed and strength of monsters have been increased by 5%. In proportion to the remaining time, the player's movement becomes slower, and the monsters become stronger. Reaction time slowed down by 1 second, and the speed and strength of monsters increased by 10%, with 3 minutes left. At this level, the guy needs to predict the movements of the golems in advance. The true horror of hellish complexity will appear now. Does it make sense to take risks in training? The player decided that there was a point, all for the sake of a secret mission, which is only on hellish difficulty. From the destroyed monsters, one golem boss was assembled. This is the secret task. The monster turned out to be very noisy. The guy had to cover his ears. For a secret mission, you can get an upgrade that is not available on other difficulties. The boss tried to step on the player, but Cook managed to jump away. Choosing an opportunity, the main character struck the golem with a sword. However, the monster's skin turned out to be much stronger than the character expected. His sword suffered more than the boss. The fight is tough. Cadence will only be able to receive the reward when the phase ends. All he can do now is change his equipment. The player removed the rough sword and took the corrupted physical damage hammer. Now you can start the battle from the beginning. Such weapons will clearly give more damage. With 1.5 minutes left to hold, Cook rushed to attack. He swung his hammer. This time the boss took more damage and a plan appeared in the guy's head. Dodging attacks, Cadence struck the golem again and again. Due to such a high speed, the stone monster did not have time to dodge attacks. This is a monster from training, so you just need to cut off his health. The weak point of the golem is the core on the abdomen. You need to aim there. However, the stone is too high, you need to reach it somehow. It's not like in the game the character can't jump so high. If you can't climb up, you need to force the boss to go lower. With a circular blow, Cadence hit the golem in the legs so that it would become shorter in stature. The main character struck blow after blow. Parts of the boss flew in different directions. Finally, the monster, without balance and support, fell to the floor. The player then jumped as high as he could to land the final blow. This is the end for the stone monster. Its life stone shattered into pieces. The golem's eyes went dark, and Cadence did his job perfectly. A monster of unknown rank was defeated. The first stage of training was completed. There are still 39 seconds left. The guy saved a lot of time thanks to this hammer. The protagonist received a hidden reward for completing the first stage of training, A-rank stamina. The dragon's eye skill was unlocked, and the guy also received a huge amount of health. But this is only the first stage of training out of a huge number. Even in the real dream world, the character went through training for a whole month. In the middle of the forest, Cadence was killing slimes. Killing them was very easy. With the eye of the dragon, the main character saw opponents, even if they were hiding. The guy likes the hellish level and his dragon eye skill too much. Looking around carefully, Cook saw his opponent and threw his weapon into the void. He hit the target, a monster whose appearance was hidden from ordinary human view. The dragon's eye allows the user to see the mana flow, so it is impossible to hide from the guy. Another hidden task was completed. The hidden stage was opened due to the completion of the hidden task. A boss appeared. A woman called the player a fool. He could live on. If he had just gone away and pretended not to see her, she would have spared him. The boss also noted that Cook's arrogance led to his death. While the monster was crucified in front of the man, he managed to slip away. The situation turned out to be completely different. The boss's arrogance led to her death. Cadence wasted no time. As the monster spoke, he began to attack. And then, taking the opportunity, I cut it in two. It was too easy. The boss tried to justify herself. If it was her real body, then the person would already be dead. However, the guy is no longer the same as he was at the beginning of the training. He advised the boss to return to his body and wait for him. Cadence has completed all stages of training. He has received awards for training. In 5 seconds, the player will be transferred. He has been waiting for this moment for a very long time. The main character went through the portal. Cook decided to check how much time he spent learning. 3 months have passed. He didn't think that he would disappear for so long. First, he needs to find survivors here. You need to first assess the situation It took place in a high school in Seoul. The players were in a panic. No one wanted to go fight the monsters. They were sure that everyone would die if they stayed here. The policeman confirmed the guy's words. There is no more time to wait. They have 1 day left. Orson Marshman, a police officer, one of the players couldn't stand it. Doesn't the officer understand that the game has become real? Everyone has only one life. Everyone can die. But Orson calmed the guy. The officer is also scared. However, players must go to the dungeon, otherwise a rift will soon occur. This is a phenomenon during which the number of monsters in the dungeon increases rapidly. They get out of it. When a rift occurs, the portal turns red and the rank of the dungeon begins to slowly increase. The problem is that people here are not able to cope with such complexity. If the rank E of the dungeon rises to D, then there will be no chance. If there is a rift again, then no one will survive it. The dungeon is pumped at a tremendous speed. This is because the monsters here are the undead. Most often, zombies are found. Unlike other monsters, a zombie bite infects instantly. Moreover, they can turn their own kind. Even corpses can turn into zombies. Other dungeons in this area are still F rank. Now the players are at the school, which was once a dungeon. Innocent children who studied here were helpless in the face of the attack of the dead. The squad has already lost many people, family, loved ones, friends, but we have to fight. Fight to protect the house and those who can still be protected from monsters. And most importantly, we need to save ourselves from the changed world. We need to preserve what is left at any cost. Marshman called on everyone to fight. In this world, dungeons are not homework, but a disaster. The policeman is well aware that his plan is insane, but he must take care of the survival of people. The team went to clear the E-rank dungeon. The members didn't know if they would return home alive. Although the squad does not have a good ranker, it does have Emily Gibbs, an excellent marksman. The squad leader inspired his comrades to go fight monsters. Life in the world will no longer be the same. The streets are a complete mess. Cars have been abandoned by their owners. The building is filled with corpses. Many people have been killed in their apartments. Cadence closed the eyes of the little boy who had fallen during the monster invasion. You need to find living players. Grouping will make it easier to survive in this world. After leaving the apartment, Cook found a portal to the dungeon near the school. The red portal is the most dangerous. The color of the portal reflects the state of the dungeon. Blue lungs, green normal. After the red dungeon is broken, the portal will turn black. There were 24 hours left before the rift. While the guy was looking around, there were 22 hours left before the rift. In the game, when the time before the rift begins to accelerate, monsters appear frequently and in large numbers. At such moments, entire settlements are destroyed. If it is the same as in the game, then a rift will soon occur. In this case, people in the dungeon will not last long. We still need to find out why the time count suddenly began to speed up. The structure of the dungeon changes depending on the level. There is nothing remarkable about F ranks, but E ranks make objects within themselves several times larger than a person. Cadence ended up in an empty classroom. A phenomenon in which items inside a dungeon grow larger is called expansion. The player's level is low. He cannot relax his vigilance. A revived skeleton has appeared, level 40. It is possessed by a cursed spirit. Looking straight out of horror movies, Cook chose a sturdy sword. The skeleton looked at the main character with his soulless eyes. The monster rushed to attack the main character. Cadence was completely calm. The player quickly dealt with the skeleton, cutting it with a sword. To defeat the monster, you need to find its core. Its weak point is the neck. You need to get rid of the spirit in it. After discovering, you need to cut the monster. And when the skeleton cannot resist, you need to finish it off once and for all. Namely, to split the core, thereby killing the skeleton. In fact, it is not difficult to cope with this monster. Cadence has improved his level. He has not heard this sound for 100 years. At the beginning of training, it sounds more often. But due to the maximum level, Cook hadn't heard him since he finished off the 30th. It was surprising that there was only one skeleton. As others appeared, the main character received many titles on this floor. After a while, the player found a mountain of dead skeletons. Someone must have come here earlier. You will have to postpone leveling and find the people who are fighting in this dungeon. At this time, there were fierce battles with a police squad. There were too many skeletons. Monsters attacked people from all sides. Something wrong is happening here. An hour ago, things were going very well. The squad coped with its task. The players acted in unison. Even the weakest could fight. Thanks to Emily, the team had no casualties. She perfectly covered those who did not see the approaching danger. Nothing foreshadowed trouble. When suddenly there was an explosion, many were injured. The squad did not even understand from which side the explosion occurred. They needed to disperse. Things were bad. Orson noticed two men dressed in green cloaks upstairs. They were clearly involved in the explosion. It must be players. It's impossible for monsters of this level to appear in an E-rank dungeon. First, you need to get people out of here. The squad needs to get out of range of the spell. The players are aiming at the strongest player in the group. They must have some kind of plan. Marshman tried to come up with a plan of action. No one expected this in the dungeon. A player appeared next to the policeman. He mocked the commander's cowardice. Orson tried to strike at the enemy, but he deftly dodged the attack. The player reported that they were left alone. The enemy clearly knew the detective. The policeman could not believe who the man was. He clearly did not recognize him. The enemy was disappointed in the detective story and was preparing to strike. There was another explosion, flames burning Orson's body. The man managed to dodge the blow of a stranger. The enemy is playing with him. The masked player laughed. He compared Marshman to a cockroach. Wave Rider's spear, this reward for disabling the server, but with a level limit. At least its power alone makes it effective. You need to wound this player, no matter what his level is. It is clear from his skills that he is a high-level fighter. However, no matter how strong the opponent was, he would not use the explosion on himself. The detective took advantage of the opportunity and attacked the attacker. The masked player knew Marshman's steps ahead. He was too predictable. And again there was an explosion. For the first time, the body of the policeman is enveloped in flames. The shockwave swept him into the wall, and Orson was hit hard. The detective is powerless against the masked player. He still does not understand what kind of person he is. The stranger came closer. He noted that Marshman had lost his sense since their last meeting. Memories surfaced in the policeman's head. A few years ago, he caught one murderer. He brutally murdered one woman, and Orson finally understood who was standing in front of him. The criminal took off his mask. Now he believes that he can deal with the detective for putting him in jail. The player had been waiting for this opportunity for too long, and then suddenly such luck turned up. Louis Adrian, a notorious serial killer, escaped from prison when Dreamworld became a reality. The culprit was sentenced to death, a demon who killed 7 people. So everyone who is with him now, his cellmates, this is the worst scenario. The detective could not believe that such a monster had the right to become a player. Louis recalled that all of Orson's teammates are dead. No one will come to save him. Adrian's cellmates have probably already finished off all the remaining comrades of the man. As soon as the criminal wanted to finish off the policeman, an explosion rang out. Someone broke through the wall in the room. This was clearly not in the plans of the attacker. Cadence has finally found more players. Now he can figure out what is happening in the dungeon. However, the guy quickly realized that something was wrong here. Could it be that the players were fighting each other? Louis was puzzled by the appearance of another man on the battlefield. Marshman warned the player to run. Whoever the new participant in the fight was, he shouldn't have interrupted Adrian. He decided to blow up the player. Orson was about to lose hope when suddenly the young man emerged unharmed from the fire. Cook used the dragon's eye. He realized that the masked man was involved in the explosion. Compared to the labyrinth of choice, the criminal will be easy to deal with. The masked man decided that he would not miss this time, but the player deftly avoided the explosion. Cadence quickly realized that the masked man was a red player. This is a person who constantly kills other players. There are only 3 lives in Dreamworld, so such people were considered villains. Even the developers perceived them as a cancerous tumor. At one time, the guy almost failed the raid because of one of them. Red players must be killed immediately. Running past the corpses, Cook realized that they did not die from monsters. They were clearly killed by a man in a mask. Maybe he was involved in speeding up time. The criminal wanted to bribe the guy and promised that he would let him go, but Marshman warned that there was a serial killer in front of the player. Cadence heard the name of the maniac on the news, so the matter is even more interesting. The hero does not intend to leave the man alive. The character activated the dragon's eye and eliminated the hidden danger. He removed the secrecy from the second masked man and decapitated the criminal with one blow. Louis did not expect that his ally would be killed so quickly. The guy informed the red player that his time had come. It's time for a serial killer to take responsibility for all the crimes committed. Cook exchanged his sword for another weapon and threw it accurately at the intruder. Throwing an isolation skill on top of this, slightly increases safety. Player Louis Adrian died. The guy received an oak staff from him. The last criminal in this room remained. Cadence moved to him and grabbed him by the cloak. The red player begged to wait, but he didn't wait for the others. He and his teammates killed a lot of people. The criminal did not give up. He tried to use a spell against the guy. Cook recovered the weapon left in the corpse and rushed to attack. The main character quickly ran up to the last red player. His time came to an end. Without a shred of doubt, Cadence killed the last culprit by decapitating him. The guy's level increased. Apparently, the system recognized them as monsters. This man has killed countless players, so there's no point in feeling guilty about his death. The character received the grass of the dungeon. Now he understands why the attackers were in such a hurry. He should also speed up. Left alone, the guy approached the detective, who said that Louis had killed his sister. Marshman thanked his savior and asked for a favor. His men were ambushed. They split up, and there were at least 10 enemies. The detective checked those who died. They were criminals. The prisoners became players. And they are not attacked by monsters. They probably found some object, plus their target is the shooter Kevin, a.k.a. Emily Gibbs. The player did not expect to find out such a secret that the idol was a famous shooter. Is it possible that the one above the heavens, the magical shooter Kevin, is a girl and even a famous idol? Even the most loyal fans could not imagine such a version of events. Near the audience, Orson and Cadence fled, hiding behind the bodies of the criminals. Cook was still thinking about the news the detective had given him. In fact, Marshman was also very surprised at first. The strikingly famous idol singer can be a great player. The 12th place, Kevin, was nicknamed the Magic Revolver Shooter for his skill with weapons. Who would have thought that Emily would spend so much money on donations? Cadence still doesn't believe it, because they're so different. Having reached the right point, the guys stopped. They were surprised that their plan worked. Monsters do not pay attention to people. At first they were very worried, but the idea turned out to work. Since it was not possible to take the inventory of the criminals, Cook decided to use their abilities. They remained active for a day after death. The players stood in front of the entrance to the gym. There were the remains of dead skeletons, which meant that there were other players here. There are 3 hours left before the dungeon breaks. Too little time. The main character is now sure that someone is speeding up the passage of time. Grass from the dungeon does not sell well in stores, but it comes in handy in different situations. With its help, you can speed up the break. The method is simple. You need to create a flower. To do this, you need to mix 2 ingredients, grass and water from the dungeon. Although strangely, water only drops in dungeons of rank B and higher. Among those players met was a man who had been playing long enough to get water as a reward for shutting down the server. Most people wouldn't be able to hack a server after it goes offline. Someone else comes out. At this time, Gibbs was actively fighting monsters. It was quite easy to deal with them. Arrows were flying at her everywhere. This time, the danger was from above. The girl deftly dodged them, jumping to a safe distance. The criminals have already begun to annoy the shooter. She could have coped with the boss if she had not been interfered with. The E-level boss, the Death Knight Virgil, although strong, has his weaknesses. The Death Knight has incredible stats and terrifying defenses. It is clear from the title that he only uses sword techniques that are easy to predict. Gibbs deals damage from a distance, so such an opponent is the best for her. But the problem is in the marksman. How could they ever shoot such a beautiful girl? And why didn't the Death Knight attack them? Probably they have some kind of immunity item. The girl realized that they are also players. And she can't shoot ordinary players, no matter how much she wants to. You need to concentrate. This is not a game, but reality. There is no other choice. First, the criminals themselves attacked Emily. They killed her allies. Secondly, the enemy is in front, so you need to aim there. Gathering all the will into a fist, the girl pulled the trigger. It is not for nothing that she is in the top of the best players. The bullet hit the target. One criminal was neutralized, but what to do with the rest? Gibbs managed to trick the masked men into pretending to be aiming at a monster. Thanks to her actions, the ranker received a poisonous potion. The boss came very close to the girl. We need to kill him as soon as possible and leave this damn place. He will soon destroy everything here. The monster is incredibly strong. Will she be able to defeat him? The girl is very exhausted. Emily couldn't understand why her health was decreasing. Even if she dodged the blow, everything was so realistic. Only now did Gibbs notice that there were 3 hours left before the dungeon was broken. She realized that time is speeding up. It was not so obvious before. The girl was busy fighting and didn't often look at the timer, so she didn't notice the acceleration of time. With her level, such a monster would not be defeated in 3 hours if she had more time. And if there is a rift, then the boss's level will increase to D rank, then there will be no chance at all. So there is only one way out. The shooter decided to try one plan. It may well work. The gamer shot at the boss. She hit the target clearly, but how long will this shot last? The Death Knight is unconscious for 5 seconds. You need to finish him off during this time. Gibbs activated the Blood Orb ability, which is her strongest ability to date. Concentrating on the upcoming shot, the girl tried not to think about what would happen in case of failure. It's time to finish off the monster, and then the criminals. Stop wasting time. Gibbs's current body wouldn't last long, and she could feel her body getting heavier and harder to breathe. It must hit in one attempt. You need to shoot directly at the target. Emily Uba was about to pull the trigger when Cook shouted at the top of his lungs for her to run. 5 seconds passed. The shooter did not have time to complete her plan. The boss came to his senses and began to get up. The gamer did not understand what had happened. She missed, and her stamina was already at 0. She was finished. As soon as the monster was supposed to fish the girl, Cadence set the barrier for 3 seconds. Ranker managed to pick up the weakened Emily and gently put her on the floor. The young man asked the singer if she was okay. There was no time to crucify. There was very little time left, and the boss was still not defeated. The monster began to transform. The hope of success diminished at a tremendous rate. It has evolved. If now the boss level is D, then there is no chance of winning. Demon Lord Virgil, after leveling up, he will need time to adapt. This is a chance. Emily warned the players that they could still get out of the dungeon. The girl is sure that it is now impossible to kill the boss. The only thing left is to run. And the criminals stopped shooting. They must have escaped through the exit. And they will try to prevent the team from leaving the dungeon. But it is better to face them than fight the boss. The problem is how to save the rest of the people in such a short period. Cadence decided to fight the monster, but he needs other equipment. With a long sword, he can buy a little time. But such a weapon is not enough to win. Cook asked Orson to lend him his weapon for a while. It is, of course, for level 80, but nothing. As soon as Cadence took the spear, he felt incredible power. Wave Rider Spear, an 80th level item, is a magical weapon that creates waves that increase damage. If the user's level does not match it, it will not manifest itself to its full potential and will remain sealed. Emily was perplexed since the guy had awakened the spear, then its level was above 80. Come to think of it, he had strengthened his entire body and was even able to grab the girl while she was using the blood sphere. Who is this player, and why is he so confident in his victory over the D-rank boss? The team stood in front of their strong opponent, who must be defeated at all costs. The young man took care of the tired girl and gave her a dividing potion. Now it's Demon Lord Virgil's turn. These are his last moments of existence. The player decided to run around the boss and create a circular wave of damage. The protagonist activated the Dragon's Eye to find the monster's weak point. It remained in the same place, in the neck, a little high, but still real. Thanks to his previous damage wave, Cadence activated wave rolls that disoriented the boss. The monster was captured by the Saiyans, but he defeated the attack with his weapon. It seems that the Demon Lord can't resist the ability. He still needs time to adapt. He is now the weakest of the D-level bosses. The team is able to defeat the monster. At this moment, Gibbs decided to help his partner. Virgil was attacked by the sniper's flashlights. He was unable to parry a single shot. The gamer decided to find out from the stranger who he is, since he has potions of such a high level. It doesn't matter for now. We need to hurry up while the potion is working on Emily. The girl immediately rushed into battle with renewed vigor. Since her partner does not run away, then she is ready to fight. Thanks to her actions, the Lord is immobilized for 3 seconds. A great moment to use ferocious waves. The guy threw a spear at the boss, leaving a huge hole in him. The monster was injured too badly. He will no longer be able to fight. The team defeated the D-level boss, Demon Lord Virgil, and the guy's level increased. The squad managed to clear the fallen D-rank school. The players went to save the remaining team members. At this time, the criminals were waiting for Kevin at the exit. She is the key to their plan. They cannot leave the girl alive. The sniper hasn't been out for a long time. Did she die in the boss fight? She may be capable, but she is not at the 80th level. Even Emily would have a hard time defeating a D-level monster. You need to continue to monitor the portal and report on the situation. You can't underestimate the shooter. A notification popped up. The fallen school has been cleared. The dungeon rift has been canceled. There is no choice. The blacklist disappeared from the labyrinth of choice. An interesting outcome of events, the criminals decided to retreat. The attackers realized that Carl had been trained and was most likely involved in the cleanup of the fallen school. Cadence gave the Wave Rider's spear to his master and thanked Orson. Gibbs saw through Cook's secret. She realized that the legendary ranker Carl was standing in front of her. The guy was flattered that the famous idol singer recognized the ranker. Marshman began to explain that Cadence's abilities were impressive, but the #1 ranker had left the maze of choice. It is impossible that he came out of there and immediately came here during the rift of the dungeon. The chance of such a coincidence is negligible. Emily has come here to meet Carl. There are stories about places that never became dungeons, but it is not known who is behind it. That's why the girl thought so. She asked the player for forgiveness. She should have thanked the hero first. Cadence never admitted that Gibbs was right. He said that Emily was not to blame. The squad found all the survivors and took them from the dungeon to an abandoned school pantry. Many survived. This is good. Now every player is appreciated. The team was afraid that they wouldn't find any of the survivors at all, and they all just hid. The survivors were ashamed that they were cowardly and did not help the guys in such a difficult battle. However, people are innocent. It's good that they just survived. The nurse asked the detective how he was feeling and whether he could move. Cook completely agreed with Orson. They will still have time to become stronger. Now it is important that the guys are alive. Let the detective think otherwise, but he will be useful during cleanups. The colleague decided to ask Emily if she was okay because the girl was left alone with a strong monster. Although the player suffered more than Gibbs, she was really concerned about the shooter's condition. The idol replied that she was fine, and the girl also admitted that she messed up a little with the task. Marshman hopes that now the squad will be able to get into the camp. He invited Cadence to join. The main character accepted the offer. The other participants were surprised by the new comrade. He is quite strong. The squad arrived at Banjo Station, all the monsters outside the F level. They got out of the dungeon during the rift. Since they used to live in small spaces for a long time, they will not enter the same ones here. They must have chosen this place by chance, but the location is good enough. At the bottom of the station, there was a whole settlement, from old people to small children, those who were able to survive the day of release. People were happy to see Marshman return. Everyone rushed to meet him. The detective was genuinely happy to return to camp and see everyone safe and sound. In the distance, the voice of an old man was heard. The policeman asked how the camp was doing in his absence. The leader reported losses and wounded soldiers. The old man asked the squad to rest. He would bring them food. The detective approached the ranker and told him to rest while the food was being prepared. Too many things happened today. Although the day was not difficult, it frayed my nerves. The guy had just begun to fall asleep. As in a panic, he began to disperse sleep. He must not lose vigilance. Over the past time, the main character completely forgot to check the reward for defeating the boss. Virgil's Blade of Regret, unique ability to cover the blade with ice, required level 120. Even if the player uses all the points he has collected, it is unlikely to be enough for the 100th level. In case of a level limit, the user will need to add points, which means that in total they will have to be equal to 600. And the detective could use a spear, although he did not have level 80. Did this mean that a small discrepancy was acceptable? The problem is that the protagonist reward is not only a weapon, but also a sealed book. It cannot be used without access, as it is a legendary item, and it is because of this book that it came. I will have to try, but the biggest problem is that the guy took the animal out of the inventory. Cadence touched the toy on the nose. As it came to life, Glenn woke up at the will of his owner. Glenn jumped to the floor. Rumbling was heard from his stomach. The animal was catastrophically hungry. Glenn is the pet who followed Carl to Dreamworld. The character is very happy that he woke up. But the pet's reaction is too strong. The reason for this may be, 1, the dungeon. It's not so bad now, he's in the form of a squirrel, but his true form is a dungeon-eating monster. The monster Glendower, Cook's former pet, whom he met at level 15 and the reward for closing the 3rd server. It eats nothing but monsters from the dungeon, so when the animal behaves anxiously, it means that something is going on related to the dungeon. The problem is that it started in a camp, in a place where there are a lot of people. Maybe it's the skeletons. Some monsters could be freed during the dungeon break. So there are only two options. Either something is wrong with Glenn, or something strange is happening here. The only disadvantage of the fact that it specializes in smells is that it is not clear what attracts the animal. Then Cadence noticed the man. He was muttering to himself that he was starving. That's the thing, it looks like he's on the edge. His fingernails are already blackened. A meeting was taking place on the edge of the camp, and people were unhappy with what they had heard. The man was furious. He didn't want to go kill skeletons and risk his life. If people hide, then the monsters will leave. Then they will be safe. That's the point. Since the skeletons began to diverge in different directions, many people will die because of them. And for players, this is a chance to level up and become stronger. Monsters are dangerous because of the dungeons. Since they received the blessing of the dungeon from them, they are now weakened. In addition, it is 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun is at its peak altitude. At this time, the dead are weakest. No one forces the guys to go fight. Their lives are in their hands. The decision is up to them. Cadence can't miss this chance to pump up, and he needs to find something. The detective announced to the squad that there were newcomers among them. They needed to introduce themselves. The policeman, Orson Marshman, is quite confident in close combat. After the leader, Riley Becker, introduced himself as if he was performing in front of his classmates. The next one was Emily Gibbs, who was level 79 and good with firearms. The gamer had no need to talk about herself. She is so popular that everyone knows her. Next was Harley Francis. Judging by the equipment, he played the first Dreamworld. Then Orson decided to introduce Cook to the team. Clearly, no one knows him. Harley jumped up and shouted to everyone that Cadence Cook was standing in front of them. As it turned out, they went to the same school. The main character was a typical victim. He was a frequent bully at Cadence School, especially after the Cook family went bankrupt. The guy replied indifferently that Francis had changed a lot, as if he had been reborn. Then Emily stood up for the character. She noted that the squad was alive thanks to Cook, and demanded that the impudent man apologize. For that matter, Cadence confidently informed the squad that he was the legendary ranker Carl. Everyone was shocked. Carl himself was standing in front of them. The one who is higher than the heavens, he has no equal. Gibbs knew it. Her intuition was right. It was Cook she had been looking for all along. Marshman was embarrassed. He apologized for the misunderstanding. Harley fumed with anger and started shouting that Cadence was lying. He couldn't be Carl. Before the impudent man pays attention to the t-shirt, it falls out of Virgil's boss. Francis did not want to accept this fact. He was sure that Cook was helped by Orson. Then the bully asked what level the guy had. Cadence calmly replied that he was level 37. Harley was trying to prove to everyone that the player was a liar. The team went to clean up the streets. Cook activated the Dragon's Eye and informed his comrades where the monsters were. After that, the main character found a whole squad of skeletons ahead. The command was given to prepare for battle. Marshman threw his spear into the crowd of monsters, clearing the way for his comrades. The commander gave the command to attack 2 by 2 on one skeleton. But there were too many monsters. They would soon surround the squad. One of the players was already lacking stamina when Gibbs appeared and covered a friend. Francis demanded that Cook get out of the way and watch the professional handle the job. At school, he asked for bread and gave 50,000 won because he did not know how much bread cost. The main character did not hold a grudge against the bully because once, with the help of him, Cadence managed to make money. Glenn sat and enjoyed devouring skeletons and unnecessary objects. The character approached the pet and asked if he smelled something tasty nearby. Glenn turned his attention to the southeast, which meant that there was something interesting there. The guy smashed the skeleton with one blow and began to look for what the animal pointed to. The skull was empty. Glenn felt something delicious right next to the owner. Cook threw the skull to the pet, and he was delighted. The sun will set soon, which means that the dead will become stronger. It's time to return to camp. The team members were glad that they came. They raised their levels well. Orson came across Cook sitting near a mountain of skeletons, and the commander asked the player what he was doing. The main character was already on his nerves. The pet ate a large amount, but still did not indicate what the guy needs. Glenn smelled the buffet nearby. His eyes changed. Perhaps this time something valuable. Marshman thanked everyone for their work and offered to return to the camp. Cadence approached the detective and asked him to go to a certain place first. Glenn pointed the owner to the flower shop. There must be something interesting there. There was an unbearable stench inside. It was impossible to breathe. The whole squad pinched their noses. An E-Class dungeon, a garden of death, has been discovered, and the King of Flowers, who is spreading spores, must be eliminated. Reward for completion, Flower Bud of the King of Flowers. Time to complete 30 minutes. In case of failure, there will be a break. Virus spores cause the dungeon disease. The initial rift has already occurred inside. That's what Glenn reacted to in the camp. The man's face turned red and his fingers darkened from behind the dungeon. In Dreamworld, there are different dungeons, regular and thematic, decorated in a certain style. The Gardens of Death, where immobile monsters live, are flowers. When a rift occurs, it releases not monsters, but a virus. When virus spores enter the body, they become deadly parasites that turn people into monsters. The people in the camp are like non-player characters. The virus will affect all non-players who have no resistance. But with players with E-Class resistance, everything should be fine. You need to stop the development of the virus. Soon the sun will set, the monsters will become stronger, and the squad will become an ideal target for them. The red color of the portal means that there is nothing left to the rift. If the team leaves it, then things will only get worse. When the dungeon turns into a D rank, then not only the team members will be in danger, but also the people in the camp. The portal was found only now due to the fact that it was hidden behind an inconspicuous door. The squad had no choice but to go underground. There was no point in returning to the camp. And then the team will figure it out along the way. There is very little time left. The detective decided to conduct a small raid, send the best players to the dungeon, and the rest to the camp. 3, Cadence, Emily, and Ors would have sufficed, but a minimum of 4 players were required to enter. Francis's team was sluggish. He has a good defensive record, and he himself is of a high level. So no one should die, but you can't relax. Dungeons are cemeteries for people. Harley was indignant. Why do they need a low-level deceiver? They need to return to the camp and take someone better. As soon as he wanted to eat the apple, when Cook said not to touch the fruit, Francis was indignant because it was the apple of the dungeon. A great thing to replenish mana. The more mature it is, the more mana it will give. Cadence warned his comrade of the danger, but he did not want to listen. Emily is tired of the antics of the narcissistic blockhead. He is so stupid that he could not distinguish an apple from a poisonous fruit. We must not forget that the squad is located in the Gardens of Death, where each plant intends to kill someone. Finally, the team made it to the boss room. They reached here without any problems, which is suspicious. The boss of the dungeon is located in a greenhouse. He is called the King of Flowers. It looks like a sunflower because it often witnesses human death. Experienced players call it a suicide bomber. After defeating the King of Flowers, the party will receive a flower bulb that can be used as an antidote. This is the only hope for the cure of the patients at the station. Francis decided to heroically get the bulb himself. The greenhouse began to stink violently. Can the flowers really smell so bad of slops? The boss began to attack the squad. He hit the place where the guys were standing with his thorny stem, but they managed to jump away. Emily shot at the King of Flowers. The sunflower did not like it. Francis decided to deal with the boss alone. He ordered Cadence not to interfere. Suddenly, the clumsy hero stumbled over a monster he stepped on. He should have looked at his feet. Obviously, the flowers that are next to the king will be different. To get close to him, you need to cross this piranha field. The commander said that he had to trust Gibbs. There was no other option. But it would take too long. The flower would have time to become D-level. However, if she enters the state of the blood sphere, she will be able to increase the area of damage. The girl wondered if Cook had the elixir. Emily asked for 1 elixir, but Cadence refused. Because of the others, he had no chance to level up. The main character rushed straight towards the boss. He needs to become stronger. The guy easily dealt with the thorny vines. They were not a problem for Cook. Francis looked at Cadence with envy. How could he do such a thing on the 37th level? The envious man offered 2 options. Either Cook was lying and his level was very high, or the player uses an unbalanced ability. Easily making his way through the predatory sunflowers, Carl killed the boss with 1 blow. It was too much. Cadence went through the dungeon in a matter of seconds. The main character received valuable artifacts, a flower bulb and a studded glove. He had finally managed to raise his level up 3 notches. During the time spent in the dungeon, it managed to get dark. The squad was returning home. The loot is better than the hero could have imagined. This gauntlet has the ability of spikes if necessary. The hand turns into a semblance of a sword. Thanks to the celestial body skill, the character has no restrictions on the use of weapons, so the glove will come in handy. Soon, Cadence will be able to clear D-rank dungeons, thereby building a clear line between himself and other players. Francis could not believe it. It turned out that this man was really Carl. The squad stumbled upon the place of battle. The picture was terrifying. The people were clearly in panic. The detective checked the pulse. The people were already dead. It seemed that something had happened in the camp. The crew instantly rushed to the camp. The station was dead silent. Cadence came across footsteps, all in different directions, as if someone was walking back and forth. The main character is sure that this is a progressed disease of the dungeon. There are no signs of skeletons. The guys heard someone's voice. Someone still managed to escape. The potion cannot be used on the target. You need a potion of revival. The man's legs are in terrible condition. The victim was given a potion of paralysis to stop him from feeling pain. This was enough for the wounded man. He woke up. The detective began to ask what had happened in their absence. The man began to say that it all started suddenly. A huge monster appeared on the stairs. People were preparing to lead him into a trap as they were training. But danger awaited from behind. People began to turn into zombies and attacked other people. First Samuel, then Lilith. Bobby escaped, and the man tried to save them. Painful memories drove the player into a state of madness. He began to scream. If there was a healer nearby, the husband could be cured and would not have to worry about the virus. Everyone fled, and Lilith became a monster, probably the third stage of the dungeon's disease. The first stage ends with a change in the color of the fingers and chills. The second turns a person into a zombie and forces him to attack others. Only on the third people become monsters. The man died. But the garden was already cleared. The third stage came so quickly, although the symptoms were just beginning to develop. Somewhere in the darkness of the station, among the corridors, a new boss was waiting for the team. Emily quickly dealt with the zombies with her revolver. If the transformation has occurred, then the person can no longer be cured. Those who could not survive the disease of the dungeon lie here, and the rest have gone along the paths. The detective asked everyone to take on the monster. Cadence quickly coped with the task. The squad wandered the corridors, hoping to find survivors who could still be saved. Finally, new tracks appeared. They again led in different directions. They probably lead to Station 8. The camp originally planned to go there in an emergency. Cadence found a monster ahead of him along the tracks and rushed to meet it. It was Lilith. It was about her that the deceased man spoke. Now she is a monster who needs to be dealt with. This is the outcome of the dungeon disease. It turns people into monsters. Many people died in the game because of it. The fate of all mankind is at stake. Cook needs to finish off the monster as quickly as possible. It is strong. Additional arms serve as a shield for the monster. In this case, you need to get rid of these hands. The main character cut off everything unnecessary. A new hand escaped from the monster's mouth and wanted to grab the guy. Marshman wanted to help, but most of the attacks are useless against Lilith. It's a third stage monster. It's level 80, so Orson can't do it. You need to find Lilith's weak point and hit him directly to kill the monster. The weak point was the neck. The guy apologized to his former colleague and cut off her head. After going through 3 stages, she was equal in strength to a D-level monster. Previously, the character would not have coped with her. Fortunately, during the training, the player managed to collect 100 experience points. If you use them all, then he will become 3 times stronger. However, the one who is higher than the heavens, when converted to the 100th level, should have higher points. After all, the dungeons will not wait for the players to get stronger. At this time, the monsters were approaching. They are all the third stage of the disease, or it can be called the insatiable stage. People who have undergone transformation are just monsters. They can no longer be saved. The squad was surrounded by monsters. Were they really waiting for the squad to reach the right station? You need to think about it later. First, you need to deal with a bunch of monsters. Francis stabbed the zombie, but he didn't even manage to wound the monster. The player thought it would be easier to kill him. Cadence covered his comrade and dealt with the monster in 1 hit. The main character decided to find out if the team was sure that the others went to the 8th station. There can be no other option. There is a shopping center and other stores nearby, thanks to which you can replenish supplies. An offer was made to go there right now, but it's too dangerous. There will be more monsters. Obviously, there is more of a problem waiting for the team there, but if people went in the wrong direction, the guy would not change his mind. There is no time to discuss the direction. The monsters attack again. At the third stage, people completely change their appearance. Someone grows wings. Someone has legs and arms. Sometimes monsters become larger or thinner. Interestingly, the type of mutation depends on the desire of people. In order to cope with them, you need to determine their desires. For example, an extra eye is the embodiment of the desire to see more, or in human form he was blind and wanted to correct it. The main character decided to use a flashlight from his phone to blind the monster. He managed to knock down the transformed man. The monster temporarily lost his sight. Using the opportunity, the ranker stabbed the monster and killed it. Everything is much simpler if there is an understanding of the reason. The weapon for training has outlived its usefulness. It fell apart into pieces. The detective offered to give up his spear. Cadence refused such an offer. He has a lot of weapons, and so the guy will have to worry about the commander. The main character put on a studded glove, just wanted to try a new weapon. It is more dangerous to use it since the damage radius is smaller, but it is an effective weapon. Cadence easily knocked down the monster and finished it off with one blow. Harley began to go crazy with envy. Finally, the squad reached the boss's territory. Even monsters do not stick here. Red magic couples seem to be the enemy, aware of the arrival of guests. This is a monster of almost the fourth stage. It probably appeared during the rift. Someone fed it a flower. This is how a trigger was created, which acts as a source of disease. When the virus enters the body, it begins to multiply there and the symptoms worsen. If the trigger is not stopped, the dungeon disease will take over all of Seoul. The crew was horrified. The monster grabbed the man with its paws, preparing to devour him. The victim asked for help. In one movement, the monster bit off the man's head and threw the lifeless body on the floor. The monster urged to subscribe to the channel and put a like, and he also advised to activate notifications so as not to miss a new video. The entire corridor was strewn with the bodies of the victims of the blogger's monster. These people died a horrible death. The smell of blood mixed with the air. I wondered how many lives the monster had cut short. A terrible picture. The detective asked the ranker what the triggers were, but the guy himself did not fully understand whether it was a type of Hydra. The form of the trigger depends on what the wish was before the transformation, before they ate the flower of the dungeon. Judging by the aftermath of the battle that took place before we even got to the station, and if the stories are to be believed, there is a feeling that someone brought the trigger here. It is unlikely that the monster will be the first to attack. Until the guys encounter the trigger themselves, they will not learn anything new. Judging by the amount of mana, the monster is clearly above the 100th level. Apparently, it is a D-class boss of the middle dungeon. The monster moves extremely slowly and does not stand out in terms of strength either. But this is not enough to win. This is not an easy game in which you could defeat the same opponent with a high level or stats. It is worth noting that each monster fights in its own style. Depending on the power-ups that appear, a low-level monster can scatter strong players. Apparently, all the power of the monster lies, if not in strength, then in endurance. The detective thought about it. He'd heard that voice somewhere before. It's Mid-Fox. This voice, the trademark intonation of one famous blogger, he must be in prison. Did he really escape? He was supposed to be executed because he ate human meat on one of the broadcasts. The examination confirmed that it was human. In short, before becoming a trigger, he was in a complete ass on the verge of execution. The monster grew extra hands. He constantly repeated the same phrases with a request to subscribe to the channel and put a like. Cadence boldly rushed into battle. He was confident in his abilities. The monster blogger was not afraid of him. The blogger's hands were everywhere. They wanted to capture Francis, but he desperately fought back. The character could not keep up with the speed of the monster, so Marshman stood up for his partner and chopped off the monster's hands. Marshman alone will not cope. A bunch of new limbs provide mobility to the boss. You need to be more careful. The puddle of slime near which Cook was standing turned into a new hand. He could not relax. To buy time for the attack, it is necessary to distract the monster. The detective asked for Cadence's help. The guy quickly came up with a plan of action. The most effective way to distract someone is to give him a good hit. With all his might, the main character struck a stunning blow to the boss. But this is not enough. Too little damage is done, and the enemy has great stamina. If you do not change tactics, then the guys will not last long. Apparently, the boss decided to finish off the squad In the same way as he killed someone last time on the stream, the monster grew axe arms. The monster began to shred everything around. Then the boss noticed the idol and decided to have a snack for her, but Gibbs gave a worthy rebuff. He feels like he's in a shell. Emily's bullets don't bother him. Neither strength nor reaction speed will help defeat him. More stamina is needed. Only thanks to it, the team will be able to defeat the monster. The gamer shot the boss again, this time in order to distract, not injure. Cadence took the opportunity and approached the monster from behind. The main character struck another blow. However, the boss did not care. You can't take him with such blows. You need to come up with another plan. The monster sucked in the shooter's bullets in part of his arm, leaving the stump. He simply ate them. The squad was shocked, but at that moment they all thought of the same thing, a way to destroy the boss. The monster slammed into the wall where Cook was sitting. He managed to avoid the attack. The team's blows were too weak for the monster. Apparently the attacks work, and you can finish off the boss at this rate, but it will take too much time, and the squad just doesn't have it. It seems that there is only one way out. Harley bravely agreed to be the bait for the new plan. Francis tried to anger the boss as much as possible. He called the blogger fat, pointing to his belly. The character has good armor. Besides, the guys covered his friend. He had nothing to fear, but goosebumps still ran down his spine. Just as the monster was about to swallow Francis, Orson jumped up and fixed the boss's mouth with his spear. Emily, in turn on command, shot into the monster's open mouth, wondering if he would now be able to defend himself with his barrier. Such an attack did not suit the boss. The projectile exploding inside began to punch holes in the monster's body. The last blow remains. The squad has distributed responsibilities among themselves. You need to distract the monster's attention again. There is little mana left, and there is little strength left. But this can be easily corrected if you invest the points earned earlier. It's time to finish the boss. Cadence activated the skill of magical concentration. He managed to use a skill that usually requires a lot of mana. Since his opponent is so strong, then he needs to hit even harder. For this, he can use the available resources. The boss was happy. He wanted to taste human meat again. He began to join his hands together. He wove a protective net from his hands to trap the main character. The monster was already anticipating how delicious the guy's dinner would be. The net descended directly on Cadence. The boss was sure that now the character could not escape. Cook waited for the moment when the network dropped to a sufficient level. He destroyed it. The blogger still asked to like and subscribe to the channel. The main character chopped off his hands. Cadence promised not only to put a like, but also to repost. They all subscribed to the channel. The main character reposted the boss with all his strength. Now the team's attacks have become more effective. The team was able to defeat the glutton monster. Cook received a level up and an attention ring reward. The boss's body has become an ordinary corpse. As the life leaves the body, the mana also leaves it. He was well shredded. What kind of person arranged this? And most importantly, for what purpose? The team is obliged to find out. Cadence's gaze fell on Mead's neck. There was lightning crossing two moons, some sect involved. The mage watched the situation through his orb. The player was surprised that Carl was alive. In Seoul, the man is only in charge of 5 farms, which he sometimes checked to make sure they could grow triggers there. Adam Chandler had never seen anyone so strong. Carl couldn't survive. It's impossible. Dawson Foreman walked into the gentleman's office. He assumed that the leader was pretending to be busy while he was quietly having fun. The company was one of Dreamworld's organizations, about which little was known, but it was like a tumor, poisoning everything it could reach. By expanding the dungeons, they threatened the people on the continent, as seen in their emblem, lightning passing through 2 moons. Adam noted that his subordinate had arrived just in time. He had discovered something strange. Mr. Chandler showed the ball to Dawson. He should see that Carl seemed to have survived. Adam couldn't believe what he saw, according to reports, among newcomers, on easy difficulty in the labyrinths of choice. There are no contenders who would be sent to the hellish level, and here the men saw the impossible with their own eyes. Maybe Carl is still dead, but if he is alive, he will definitely try to interfere with the company. Chandler wants Foreman to ask his farmers if they see anything suspicious. However, Adam quickly changed his mind. He no longer needed it. Chandler found what he was looking for. The squad ran down the corridor. The squad continued to search for survivors from the station. Cadence, the great ranker Carl, was running with the crew. He had no idea that they were being followed at this very moment. the sword piercing Asaleth's neck, the monsters that were violently torn apart under his command. A dungeon that only one person can handle, its true essence is a crock, and it has data that has not been erased. So by devouring people, Adam could foresee the current situation on Earth. But Charles, who was supposed to be trained and die, survived. Mr. Chandler froze, lost in his thoughts. The thought that Carl had survived frightened him terribly. Dawson decided to encourage the leader, because the players are no longer the ones they knew before. Even the ranker is now new to training. Although it is still worth reporting to the head of the company, if this is true, then he needs to be dealt with immediately. At this time, Riley was running away from a pack of zombies in the subway station. He was the only survivor of the disaster in the camp. He wondered why the monsters hadn't run out of steam at all. It was hard to believe that they had been humans recently. Becker still ran away to another station. He already began to think that he would die without meeting the detective. In the end, the guy saw the light. He stumbled upon a train. He could not believe where a working train could come from in the new reality. 3 months have passed since the power went out. Then where is the train from? There was no time to think. The zombies were catching up with Riley. I had to run away from them as soon as possible. The character flew into the train. A warning sounded in the cabin with a request to take their seats. Since the train is departing, the doors are closing. The train drove off the platform. The monsters remained at the station. The guy managed to escape. Becker slid to the floor. He is alive. He had to run a lot. He urgently needs to get to Station 8. The detective must be there. Riley entered the class-themed dungeon, D, Ghost Train. After a while, the attendant will start checking tickets. Stowaways will become a target for the station staff. The guy fell into despair of how he would survive in the dungeon of the Class D. Harley still did not believe that Cook had defeated the boss. He certainly assumed that such a thing was possible. But when he saw it with his own eyes, Francis began to genuinely admire Cadence. He was able to defeat the D-rank boss at a low level. While the character admired the ranker, Emily wondered if his behavior was a manifestation of a disease. As the team ran, the detective, looking at what was happening around him, began to wonder if anyone could have survived at all. And the main character himself noticed that the trigger turned out to be extremely hardy. It was extremely difficult to run away from it. Maybe there is one survivor. It's a bit like fishing. Most likely all survivors are eventually infected, and some were deliberately thrown as bait. And when they meet this herd, the infected will immediately try to eat them. Triggers were created for a reason. The disease is becoming more and more serious. And who knows? Maybe one day all people will turn into triggers. The company was a kind of NPS who went over to the side of evil, could create quests and use them to lure players. They increased their power until one player destroyed everything. The player Carl entered the system. At that time, he tried to get rid of the accumulated stress by destroying the dungeons that they had been building so diligently. At one point, the biggest entertainment in Dreamworld was the destruction of the company. They have the right to hate Carl for this, but this is what makes the game different from the real world. But you need to check everything and make sure that this is the same company and not just a bunch of copycats that may consist of players. During this time, the squad arrived at Station 8, Cadence decided for himself. No matter who was behind these things, they needed to be thwarted. Apparently, it is not for nothing that Station 8 was nicknamed a ghost. There are not even any traces here. If something goes wrong, the team has an escape plan. And these are supplies for those who might be here by accident. They were hidden last time. It seems that someone visited the ghost station. Some supplies were missing in the box. Cook decided to find out why the people from the camp never became players, because they only needed to be trained. Orson didn't know how to answer correctly. Gibbs decided to clarify the situation. At that time, the internet was restricted, so some people were never able to join the ranks of rankers. Then Cadence asked if Emily could use the network. It turned out that she had just updated the phone. In addition, only people with these switches are allowed to communicate with others. Plus, there is a level system that is only available to players. At the moment, the only way to become a player is to go to the Ark. Gibbs continued that she hadn't been there often, but it was the only remaining base in the city. Members of the company came to reconnaissance in the subway. They were following the trail of corpses and came to the conclusion that Mr. Chandler was right. Gordon Taft of the company, the head of the third group, was sent to find out if Carl really survived. The group reached the ghost train, and an announcement echoed around the area asking passengers to take their seats. A themed dungeon that many people talk about. and few were able to get into it. But this train used to always run on the first line, and now it is on the ninth. Construction work was carried out here before, apparently, and the railway line was laid then. The subordinate suggested that the boss take the train. Since he was going to the 8th station, such a chance rarely happened. Gordon was furious. Could it be that his colleague was tired of living? This was a D-class themed dungeon. Although it is under the control of the company, the group does not have access to it. If they enter it, they will remain in it. Taft didn't join the company to die so stupidly at the very beginning of Dreamworld 2. The subordinate was perplexed. Mr. Chandler ordered to find Carl. Gordon was furious, since it was impossible to carry out the order. In addition, if the guys get on the ghost train themselves, then the goblins will do all the work for Taft's group. Ark translates from English as Ark, and apparently this is a reference to Noah's Ark. It seems that the Ark is indeed the last base in the entire city. Emily continued to bring Cook up to speed, updating the system. She was able to upgrade the phone, so all the while they were trying to get into the Ark. Then Cadence realized that it was likely that the rest of the survivors were there. Marshman suggested that the squad move forward faster. It is unlikely that the survivors went far. Glenn suddenly began to be active. He began to crawl over his body. Cadence itched all over his body. The pet smelled something delicious, not far from here. I need to check it urgently. Cadence decided to go and check what was in the direction where Glenn was pointing. The squad rushed after him. The fleeing squad clearly knew that people were running after him, not monsters, since the squad was talking loudly. The team is currently trying to catch up with someone else, not the survivor from the station. The fleeing person constantly turns around and sometimes even slows down as if he wants to lure the squad. The chase led the guys to the waiting room. Then the trail of the stranger disappeared. They began to look around. Harley wondered why the fleeing man had brought the team here. Perhaps it was a trap. Before Francis had time to blink, an arrow appeared a centimeter from the bridge of his nose. He was lucky that Cadence had a good reaction and did not let his comrade be shot. Cook broke the arrow in half. The whole area was covered with smoke. The enemy from an ambush began firing from a bow at the detachment. The shooter was not visible. The main character, together with the detective, neutralized flying arrows. Caden's reaction was faster than the speed of an arrow. The guys missed one arrow. It flew directly at Emily, but the gamer did not get confused and destroyed the danger that threatened her with an accurate shot. You don't have to worry about her. Then Carl and the gamer, despite the shelling, overtake the enemy and destroy him. Finally, the main character found the shooter. He was about to hit the enemy and knock him out. In front of Cook was a kobold. The character did not attack the creature, probably somewhere nearby the rift. Gibbs did not have time to delve into the situation. Cadence tried to warn her partner that the kobold was not dangerous, but the player was already too late. A bullet flew out of the singer's revolver. Only dissipating smoke remained. Although the shot could no longer be prevented, Emily, hearing the warning, managed to move the trajectory of the bullet. Handleday was delighted with the player. He was sure that Cook knew something and was ready to believe him unconditionally. The main character had to explain to the team that they were not facing a monster, but a person. Other kobolds ran to the noise. They also turned out to be people. Something bad happened to them. The leader of the affected people decided to make sure that those who came here were not usurers. He introduced himself to the squad as Nolan Black, the leader confirming that his men were not monsters. The team didn't trust Nolan and his men, so Cadence decided to clear things up. As everyone knows, the names of monsters are highlighted. People do not have lighting. The members of the squad carefully examined the kobolds, really white. This means that there are regular players in front of the team. Monsters will never have a white name. Next, Cook decided to find out why the kobolds lured them into a trap, and then attack the guys if they really hate people. Black began to show with all his might that this was not the case. They attacked the squad by mistake. The leader told the squad his story. All this misfortune happened because of usurers. On the opening day of Dreamworld, the young boy did not understand how the game became a reality, and such a cruel one at that. He was desperate to survive in a new post-apocalyptic world that would never be the same again. In the old days, Black loved to play Dreamworld. Until he was sent to the army, he leveled up to almost 200th level. He also possessed many items that could earn many rewards. However, it was when he joined the army that the time for the exchange ran out. Nolan was never able to earn the rewards. However, he is not some kind of newcomer, so with a bare ass in Dreamworld, two would not be left. After that, Black managed to unite with the rest of the survivors. They swore to stay alive, every single one. So they headed into the labyrinth of choice all together to the normal level of difficulty. Nolan was the only one who passed the maze on normal difficulty. Since then, the newly formed squad has continued to survive, but Black has proven to be the central figure. And then all of a sudden, mysterious merchants appeared throughout the station. The crew was not supposed to accept them. The merchants were very friendly and welcoming, and they shared the food and equipment they were selling. People were very appreciative. It looked like a sign of good help. But in the end, it turned out to be an ordinary scam. Survivors who couldn't pay the merchants sacrificed their player cards, naively believing that it was a mere investment for their further good. In addition, people did not know then that the food that the merchants so graciously shared contained drugs. When signing the contract, the merchants never talked about the most important thing. If people do not pay for their services on time, they will have to pay with their own bodies. As it turned out, it was written on the back in very small print, so people lost their bodies. At some point, the merchants disappeared and usurers appeared. Under the terms of the contract, they took the bodies and disappeared. And the souls of people remained locked in the bodies of kobolds. But this was only the beginning. Usurers began to come once a week to collect the interest. This was also in the contract. It is not known where the traders used them, but their memories were taken from people. Cadence suddenly realized that the other kobolds might not be able to speak because the main character needed to clarify whether someone else had come to this station, for example, from another station. But Nolan replied that there was no one. So Cook asked if the amount of debt had changed, but it did not change. The guy had a plan. He asked when the usurers should come next time. Remember the devil, and he will appear. It was at this moment that the usurers descended on the station. The squad decided to hide from the eyes of unwanted guests. Cook was very angry with the merchants and usurers. Kobolds bought absolutely everything for the same price, and the percentage was the same. However, the degree of memory loss is different for everyone. Some have even forgotten human language, and some have not. The detective and Emily still did not understand where Cadence was leading. They listened to the guy carefully. Firstly, everyone has a different amount of knowledge and memories in their heads, since people are all different. Take Nolan, for example. His memories consist of 23 years of life. Other players were younger and knew much less due to their age. It turns out that because of this, Nolan Black fights with usurers, although he understands that he is weaker than them. But what will happen when the kobolds forget that they were once human? Perhaps they will turn into monsters, as all their memories will be erased. And since there is a human soul in the body of a kobold, that's why the system defines them as players. Cadence realized that only he and the guys could help the kobolds in a difficult situation. The pawnbroker walked around the station in search of debtors. The kobolds jumped out of their hiding places on him. They tried to take the enemy by surprise and at least wound him with their arrows, but the usurer's skin turned out to be much thicker. All the kobolds' attacks did not cause a drop of damage to the pawnbroker. The monster approached one of the debtors and took him by the head. The monster decided to remind that you need to pay for everything that the kobolds took, and then the usurer crushed the poor guy. Then the monster began to take care of the others, ran straight at the debtor to do the same with him. Cadence did not let a defenseless man fight for the right to live offended. The guy deftly fought off the attacker. The main character does not intend to tolerate such an attitude towards kobolds, who were cruelly deceived. He killed the monster. The loan shark, who is also a goblin, looks strong and is also a level 80. The attacker asked Cook not to meddle in his own business, calling him Leather. Cadence pointed out that the usurer himself is a person. The main character is tired of grinding his tongue. It's time to act. He grabbed the opponent by the horn. Knocking him to the floor, the player swung his mace and struck the enemy with all his strength. One pawnbroker is ready. It remains to deal with the rest. The team has enough strength to protect the kobolds. It seems that in order to become a goblin, you need to deal with your own parents. They are very different from kobolds. At this time, the fire goblin was catching up with one of the debtors. Cook activated the dragon's eye. The main character wondered if the player was told as a child that it was dangerous to play with fire. The day of reckoning had come. The guy wanted to deal with this usurer himself. He asked Emily to switch to other enemies. Now the player is left face to face with the goblin. He can break away on it to the fullest. Gathering all his rage into a fist, Caden struck the pawnbroker with all his strength. One blow was enough. He dealt with the goblin in an instant, raising his level, and the main character also received a reward. It was a double contract. It was unfair from the start. It said that a certain A had the right to make B sacrifice or work. B, in turn, is obliged to pay all kinds of bribes or give money. The merchants must have hidden the contents of the contract with a special item. The squad managed to cope with all the usurers. At the moment, the kobolds are not in any danger. At least that's what the guys thought, until a pink glow appeared around. Apparently the souls of the players. Kobolds also fell under the effects of an unknown spell. Their souls left their bodies. The squad was at a loss as to what was happening, but they were able to protect the people from the attack of the usurers. Then Cadence drew attention to the reverse side of the contract, which stated that if there were problems with usurers who came to collect interest from B, all the powers of B are transferred to A. Everything was provided. The souls of the kobolds are mixed into one whole. They are mixed with each other. After the transformation, the souls flew in a certain direction with lightning speed. It cannot be left like this. The squad immediately moved in pursuit of the flying souls. They had to hurry. These children were in danger. In the end, the chase led the team to the ghost train. The guys were surprised by the find. Could it be that the train was still working? How was it possible? The squad was fascinated by the light coming from the train. Previously, the squad was on the 10th line. But how could it end up here? Something is clearly wrong. Glenn immediately woke up. He felt a lot of food. It was necessary to feed the pet to his heart's content. A warning rang out throughout the station about the opening of doors. Cook quickly realized that this was another dungeon. In Dreamworld, there are many different dungeons, which are just the main content of the game. Among them are the so-called mobile dungeons in the form of carts or ships. As soon as the squad got here, this train was not here, so in front of the guys is just one of the mobile dungeons. By this time, the souls had arrived. They flew right into the window of the train, which meant that they were heading to the dungeon. Cadence decided to consult with the detective about what to do, and Orson was also puzzled. Cook asked if the policeman had realized that the train was a dungeon, and if the squad would enter it. He may forever lose the chance to find one of the survivors from the camp. If any of them had survived, they would not have passed by. Besides, there are no traces of the battle. Marshman accepted for himself that there was no point in chasing the ghost. They did not know if anyone from the camp had survived. First of all, it was necessary to save the children. Their souls are now in danger. Cook fully agreed with the detective's opinion. After that, the squad prepared with a new adventure and got on the train. They had no choice. Riley was unable to obtain a boarding pass and became a target for station workers. Becker is only level 52. He is sure that he will not be able to survive in the D-rank dungeon. The young goblin found the stowaway and giggled maliciously. Today there will be a holiday on his street. He was agile enough that Riley couldn't even hurt him. The goblin was clearly taunting the boy. Becker no longer had stamina. These damn monsters do not attack but simply play. The quest failed. The character was unable to obtain a boarding pass, and now Riley is a target for a station worker. The guy was terrified. A huge goblin was standing right behind him. The worker grabbed the stowaway with one hand and threw it into a dark room. The sound of chains thundered from the darkness, and then an unknown man screamed heartbreakingly, which caused the player to panic. Accustomed to the darkness, Becker looked around. There were many people in the room, chained. At the back of the train, the young goblins were annoyed that they hadn't had enough of playing with the stowaway. After a while, new passengers entered the empty train. The young goblins had not seen people for a long time. The team members looked around. They saw small enemies who were in no hurry to attack the guests. Goblins look harmless, but their level is definitely higher than 70. But this is exactly the race that amuses itself by getting rid of people. Gibbs looked around and noticed some oddities, drawing the attention of the others. The place looked more like a freight car than a passenger car, that's right. Because this is a class dungeon, D. Dungeons do not always correspond to their appearance. For example, take a fallen school. Outwardly, it was an ordinary school. But inside, it turned out to be clearly larger than it should be. Looking at the view from the window, Cook noticed that they were not underground, but above it. This is clearly not an easy dungeon. As soon as the squad enters here, alerts are constantly coming. Soon a station employee will come and start checking tickets. If there is no ticket, then passengers will become a target of station workers. It is a themed dungeon. And in order to clear it, players must understand the rules that only exist in that particular location. After dealing with the young goblin, the main character received a reward in the form of a boarding pass. Emily Gibbs also coped with the task quickly enough, earning a ticket with one shot. After that, Marshman sent the young goblin to a long rest and received a ticket. Harley was the last to cope. The team was puzzled by how quickly they coped with the themed quest. The happiness did not last long, as Cadence demanded that the squad throw away the tickets. They do not have time for a full-fledged raid. Apparently, the station worker begins to catch fare dodgers. He starts at the back of the train, so why don't the guys lure him? Glenn was happy to dispose of the tickets. Gibbs guessed that the main character was going to make them bait. The squad did not know exactly where the souls of the children were. And in order to find out and survive, you need to act unpredictably, because this is the only way they can catch the station employee. Francis wondered what to do with the young goblins who were hiding in the corners. He thought that the goblins were scared of Mr. Carl, but Cook was smarter. The quest failed. The players became a target for the station worker. The station attendant came into the tail section. It was from him that the small goblins huddled in dark places. The employee approached Cadence and asked where his ticket was, to which he was told that the man had lost his ticket. The elder goblin wanted to continue saying that it was forbidden to travel without a ticket, but the main character got ahead of the monster and hit him. The opponent was on the floor in an instant. He did not expect that the stowaway would be so strong. The station worker could not tolerate such an attitude. He jumped up and wanted to hit the guy. Cook avoided the attack, deciding to take advantage of the opportunity. The main character grabbed the goblin's horn and hit him in the face with his knee. Completely disorienting the enemy, Cadence dealt the final blow to them, ending the battle. The main character decided to clarify whether the goblin was really a station worker. The local controller was in no hurry to answer the question. The squad did not expect such impudence from their comrade, especially in the dungeon of rank D. The player found the situation funny. In the end, they only needed to defeat the elder goblin. Now they do not have to worry about the ticket. The character sat on the controller and continued his interrogation, Cadence wanting to know where the monster was hiding the souls. The goblin did not want to say where he had hidden the souls until Cook dreamed of hitting the interrogator. He immediately split. The station worker confessed that the souls were in Don D, but he did not remember anything else. After that, the main character demanded the keys from the goblin, because the worker no longer needs to complete the quest. The controller did not want to give up the keys. Cadence decided to take them by force, but the goblin resisted. Then the guy decided to take extreme measures and sent the station worker to a short rest. Cook stopped the station worker and also robbed him. In addition, the goblin asked for it. The character received a hidden object. This is the key to Area F. He returned to the team and said that it was time to move out. Marshman could not stand it. He began to scold Cook for his behavior. After all, the goblin is also a player. Perhaps he was also a victim. Everything is not as simple as with a kobold. A person does not become a goblin, even if his soul is stolen. To do this, you need to either kill your relatives or perform breeding feeding. That is, you need to eat a person. So the party needs to forget about what pity is when they are dealing with goblins. It did not take long to look for a passage. The guys quickly coped with this part of the plan. The team received an achievement. They earned the title of Speed Dungeon Crawler. Experience points gained in the dungeon are increased by 2%. Orson began to worry if it was possible to do this. He had heard that it was impossible to complete a themed dungeon until the quest was over. Cook said that players decide for themselves how they are going to conquer the dungeon. Either they play according to the usual methods or according to non-standard methods. He went on to explain that players can use cheats, useful items, and sometimes Easter eggs from the system itself help. After passing through the passage, the team reached the safe area of FF5, a resting place with trees. Entering the car, the squad saw men peacefully dining at a table, tree branches growing above them, creating a cozy atmosphere. One of the men noticed the people who came in. He was clearly dissatisfied with what he saw. Cadence looked around. In the far corner, there were people chained around their necks, hungry and as if under someone's control. Apparently, the squad met with the evil merchants that the kobolds were talking about. The man asked with dissatisfaction if there was a ticket. Cook confidently replied that there was no ticket. He knew what he was doing. The guy had thought through his plan. The evil merchant caught up with the guest, calling him a degenerate. The merchant was about to teach his guests a lesson. After waiting for a pause, Cadence asked if it was too hot today. The squad was perplexed. The man invited the guy to follow him. He understood what he was talking about and softened a little. The command was ready. The merchant brought the guys to the table and offered them a snack. They must have been tired on the way here. The squad finally ceased to understand what was happening in this place. Emily discreetly took out a revolver. The crew felt out of place. They didn't really want to eat, especially after the kobold story. The man introduced himself as Mr. Eccles. He was the boss here. Next to the young man introduced himself as Kant. Cadence was happy to meet the merchants. Marshman decided to find out what the guy was doing. The main character explained that there was one unusual item in the goblin bundle that interested Cook. There was just a password for a resting place under the trees. The password was a phrase that wasn't too much today. To be honest, the pursuit of souls is only half the trouble. The main thing is to find a way to return them to the children. And to do this, you need to dig up information about the contract that was concluded with the children of these merchants. While the team was distracted, young goblins appeared, but from where they appeared in the safe zone. Mr. Ackles decided to clarify the situation, no matter how the guy knows the password, but this one was last month. These bastards are too prudent. Cadence put on his gloves. The man ordered the goblins to destroy the guests. The gamer took out her revolver and quickly shot several monsters. The detective and Harley worked in pairs. The merchants were frightened by the strength of the guys. They were too easy to deal with the small goblins. The merchants hurried to another zone. Marshman guessed that the reptiles might try to escape and block their way. The merchants could not escape. The villains took out their weapons. They were sure that Marshman alone would not be able to cope with them. However, one spear was enough for Orson to teach the two merchants a lesson. When the merchants were defeated, Cook said that he wanted to settle everything peacefully, and now it was time for the men to start talking. Ackles called the team thugs as soon as they dared to challenge Jared. Cadence was not ready to hear Jared's name here in the dungeon of the class D. The merchant laughed. He was sure that now the guy realized what he had done because he had just rebelled against Jared. These words made Cadence laugh. There was no point in him being afraid of Jared. He was only in 9th place in the rankings. The squad has again lost the semantic line of what is happening. Cook is clearly not telling them something. That is, the merchants want to say that Jared, this swindler, is now in this dungeon. Jared ranks 9th among the dungeon traders. He climbed to the top of the world without taking part in hostilities. Usually he is characterized by one of two options. Either Jared is terrible and you should never borrow money from him, or Jared is reliable. This person makes fair deals and respects the terms. And only from him it was possible to find goods of the best quality. And most importantly, he was ready to go to the end of the world for a client. To sell his goods, and then he suddenly disappears, as if Jared never existed, of course. He takes a lot. Cadence attacked the merchant. Did he really mean that this scammer was here? He stole expensive things with the help of fraud. Foam poured out of Ackles' mouth. He died instantly. Cook did not even understand how this could happen. The soul flew out of the bodies, just like the old kobolds. What the hell is going on here? The souls had left all the merchants. The squad was at a loss. Now they were dead. They were again the tricks of some contract. Gibbs assumed that it was all because of Jared. He clearly foresaw everything. He behaved like in a game. Francis couldn't believe if Jared could be so bad that he could take people's souls in peace. A pathetic scoundrel who deceives people while smiling. Emily lost her equipment because of him. It can't be. Did he really manage to deceive all the rankers? In this case, nothing concrete can be asserted. The squad was determined to deal with Jared, but first they needed to free the people. Cadence had almost finished when he noticed one who was not tied up. Moreover, there was someone interesting on it. This is an angel earring, a unique item of the 300th level. This thing has only one owner. The boy opened his eyes. He was surprisingly friendly. Could this be Jared? The team was ready to deal with the boy, despite his age. However, the stranger began to claim that he was not who he was taken to be. He was not Jared. Cook asked where the angel's earring came from. The boy replied that he bought it. It is as beautiful as the angel himself. A bullet flew next to the unknown person. It entered the wall next to him. Emily did not miss. She was ready to add 9 grams of lead to the boy's brain. There was no point in hiding further. The unknown person asked for forgiveness and asked him not to kill. He admitted that he really outwitted all the rankers, but then he wanted to collect more rewards. Now he is ashamed. Cadence is not talking about Dreamworld, the first part, but about what happened here now. Jared asked for forgiveness from Mr. Carl. The protagonist was furious when Jared found out that Cook was Carl. Then the boy told his story. He ended up here while he was trying to catch an imposter who called himself Jared, or rather, he was following Carl with the help of GPS. Cadence did not understand at all how the boy came up with the idea of using a navigator. It turns out that the sensor can track a specific player. Jared traded it for those items, and he also said that only next to Carl can a boy earn a lot. Marshman couldn't wrap his head around it. Jared was 14, he was a schoolboy. Harley himself was shocked. Jared also recognized the shooter, Emily Gibbs. He decided to confess to her that he was a big fan of hers. The girl was surprised that the fan knew about Gibbs's secret. He admitted that he constantly went to her meetings with fans. Emily remembered she would never have guessed that that charming boy was Jared. He admitted that at first he thought that the magic shooter was an old man with a beer belly. Cadence asked who the imposter was, and Jared revealed that there was a player who was impersonating Jared and defaming his name. During the 3 months that the navigator could not find Carl, the boy wandered around the city when several merchants approached him. They told me that there was a second Jared who was defaming the name of the real ranker. The terms of the contract with them looked suspicious, but the schoolboy agreed anyway. They said that with the help of an angel earring, the contract can be terminated. Then Jared realized that he could make good money with them and went after them to find the imposter. And Mr. Ackles himself came here to join the auction house that the imposter arranges. The house is a kind of storage. Similar to the black market in the newly opened D5 district, there will be various rare items. It turns out that these people are going to be sold there. They now seem to be unconscious. Jared decided to find out if there had been an alert when the merchants had died or not. They are red players. After death, they should drop items and give experience like with monsters. But they are still alive. They just left their bodies, their souls transferred to another place. In other words, these people are something like vessels for souls in extra life. And the organizer of all this popularly nicknamed the owner of the goblins. But this is the same false Jared. Emily wondered how he could be the owner of goblins, since they could not be subdued. Goblins have their own hierarchy. Each of them follows the commands of the one who is higher. The only and strongest goblin rules the rest. His name is Luther. But the owner of the goblins was able to subjugate even the king of these creatures. But it was because of them that it all began. So we need to find the owner. The squad should hurry, apparently. The squad is now not far from Zone E. Jared offered a shortcut. It would take a long time to explain. He would tell everything on the way. The short path was through the top. The team climbed onto the roof of the train and began their journey. Cadence was not enthusiastic about this decision, but it was a quick one. Jared knows which of the trucks is going to the black market. If he refused there, he could find out more. A notification popped up with a hidden task, and the schoolboy said that this was a safe way. Monsters are approaching. They must prevent the squad from getting to the right car. These monsters are too agile. The guys will have to work hard to defeat them. Cadence put on studded gloves and prepared for battle. Jared warned that these monsters are ghosts and a physical blow to them does not go away. Then the main character activated the skill of calmness. Now he can inflict attacks that concentrate all the mana at the point of impact. Thanks to the hint of the schoolboy, Cook easily overcame the specters. It remained to get rid of the rest. But something strange began to happen. The guy heard Jared's voice, but he was nowhere to be seen. The schoolboy was behind. He can make almost everything invisible, which is why he was nicknamed a mirage. Now it is more important to understand exactly how to deal with these ghosts and quickly. Cadence laughed if the boy was afraid that the monsters would defeat Carl himself. But there was another problem. If you get rid of all the ghosts, then their mother will appear, namely a banshee, rank D. All this time, the short path was really here, Cook had to warn his comrades. Emily could hardly cope with ghosts. Bullets did not work much against them, and the girl has nothing but a revolver. Cadence covered his comrade in arms. He tried to gather a squad and notify everyone to flee. It was useless to fight the ghosts. His comrades would not like this approach. They did not want to expose their backs to attacks. The team members demanded an explanation. They did not plan to flee the battlefield. The protagonist explained that if they get rid of all the specters, then their boss, the Banshee, will appear. The squad is not in a position to fight her now, but she would be a good help. We need to take the chance. A little later, Francis again acted as bait for monsters. His defense decreased by 7%. Harley's task, along with Orson, is to lure the specters when he agreed to the task, unaware that there would be so many ghosts. At the auction house, the fake Jared was doing what he loved. Just look at the B-25 player, incredible speed, and how he was able to get past everyone. The B-25 player won, the fake Jared watched the battle of the players remotely. It was his favorite pastime. The subordinate who came to the owner of the goblins interrupted his master. Fake Jared was unhappy with the arrival of the monster. He wondered what he needed. The goblin asked to check the report, for which he received a slap in the face from his master. He dared to spoil the false Jared's mood. Even the expensive wine lost its taste. The accomplice was wearing a goblin hat, which allowed him to subdue and control goblins. Due to the hat's abilities, monsters are subordinate to the hat owner. False Jared was furious. He rudely asked what the subordinate wanted to show him. The goblin reported to the master that one of the station workers was attacked and then robbed. The goblin showed a recording on the screen where Cadence deftly knocked down the controller and took the keys from him. It looked more like some kind of joke. The station worker was strong. Are there really players in the dungeon who can cope with such a colossus? Looking at the tape better, the fake Jared noticed a familiar figure. It was Emily Gibbs. The gentleman was shocked that such a famous person came to him in the dungeon. This changes a lot. The false Jared demanded that the entire team be caught immediately. And most importantly, he ordered Emily Gibbs to be brought to him, and the others could be finished. At this time, part of the squad was in the D6 car, Jared, Emily, and Cadence. Gibbs was worried about whether Hanley and Orson would cope with their task. There were too many ghosts. Cook said that Francis had the strongest armor of all those here and the detective had good training. The team stopped in front of the entrance to the D5 compartment. It was here that all their dirty desires could come true. Behind this passage is the black market. It is important to note, everyone wears masks there to hide their identities. However, Jared has only one mask and there are 3 people in the team. You need to come up with something. The schoolboy then lent Cadence his reclusive cloak with the ability to invisibility. With its help, Cook will be able to easily get into the market and find information regarding the contract. It's not enough, but there's another way. Jared has a lot of interesting subjects. D5 Zone, a black market casino, had a large number of elite players gathered here, and they were all wearing masks. The players were discussing their plans, desires, sharing ideas. Cadence walked past the tables, discreetly watching the masked people. He had never seen such a dungeon where the main evil is people. It turns out that the guy entered here through a portal, not a door. The scale of this dungeon is amazing. Where to start his investigation? Wandering around the casino, the protagonist noticed a goblin who was looking around. He clearly did not want to attract attention. A murky guy, that's what you need to follow. It seems that Cadence has found some kind of clue. At this time, Marshman and Francis were carrying out their part of the plan. It was not as interesting as that of the other part of the squad. The detective noticed that Harley was a good runner. It was impossible to fail the mission from Mr. Cook. I wonder how things are going in the rest. The detective hoped that everything was going according to plan for the guys. Meanwhile, in Zone D5, Jared and Emily Gibbs were standing right in the middle of the casino. Could it really work? Emily was not sure about the reliability of the plan. The goblin stood in the way of the guys. He mistook them for merchants and decided to find out what goods the players were going to sell. Then Gibbs began to act according to plan and removed her hood covering her face. What luck had befallen the housekeeper? It was Emily, whom Mr. Jared had asked to bring. The goblin offered to go to a quieter place. The guys did not notice the trick and followed the worker. Cadence came to the dungeon where various monsters and people were kept. He had never seen ogres being traded either. Hearing footsteps, Cook threw a robe over his head and disappeared from prying eyes, and the victims of the contracts arrived in time. The prisoner's face turned out to be too familiar. It was Riley, the main character, quickly remembered his comrade. Fortunately, he is still conscious, but he looks very bad. There is less and less time to save everyone, including Becker. I should tell the detective, but a little later, now there are other things to do. Cadence mentally asked Riley to wait a little. Now we need to find a goblin who is aware of all the local affairs. The guy began to look around. A red prison employee caught my eye. He is very suitable for this role. Cadence threw off his cloak and attacked the prison employee. The goblin was not ready for this. The enemy received a powerful blow to the face. He did not even understand from which side the enemy had approached. Emily was worried. She asked Jared where the goblin was taking them. The schoolboy assumed that to the auction house. There were high doors in front of the guys. They came. Jared thanked the worker. Opening the door, the light fell directly on the one whom the schoolboy had been hunting all this time. On a luxurious chair sat the false Jared. Behind him, it's apparently a goblin in the role of a guard. Could it be a third-rank goblin? The guys realized that their affairs were bad. The schoolboy recognized the scoundrel. It is he who pretends to be Jared and spoils the reputation of the merchant. And he is wearing a goblin hat. Everything fell into place. Now it is clear why goblins obey him so easily. The goblin lord recognized the girl, and his subordinates quickly coped with their task. Jared's mind was occupied with the hat. As far as he knew, it was used in the wrong way. Fake Jared was furious. He only demanded to bring the girl what this hamster was doing here. Apparently, this is too difficult for this worker. False Jared ordered Luther to get rid of unnecessary garbage. Jared asked for some time. He wanted to talk to the main merchant of the dungeon. The goblin lord signaled Luther to stop. It seemed that the boy knew who he was. Jared said that he knew any merchant knew the main merchant of the dungeon. So the boy didn't just come here. The fake Jared loves it. He offered to drink to the schoolboy with him. The player agreed who he was to refuse the fake Jared. Besides, he had such a serious guard. The guests sat down at the table uncertainly. The chief merchant asked to relax. There was no poison in the wine. Then he asked why the hamster was looking for him. Jared wanted to talk about an exclusive trade agreement. The client wanted to receive high-quality goods, but at the same time not to contact the auction house. The goblin lord said that it would take a lot of money, so Jared offered a tidy sum. 10 million gold. And when the schoolboy managed to earn so much, although what is surprising, he is also Jared, the 9th place among all dungeon traders. However, this was not enough for the goblin lord. He would like a more reliable client. Unfortunately, the guys can't reveal his identity. False Jared just needs to know that the client is an extremely famous person in the Ark. The words of the stranger interested the main merchant, which means that the Ark must be about him. He did this trick with the stuffing of a well-known name really work, and false Jared got hooked. The goblin lord asked his subordinate to bring the prepared papers. Hearing about the prepared papers, Jared was wary. The head merchant calmed the guest. He just knew that they would try to contact him. The schoolboy nevertheless decided to sign the contract. It was a huge mistake. Who better than him to know that the merchant cannot be trusted? A chain appeared on Jared's wrist. The head merchant asked not to be offended. He wanted at least some guarantees that he would not be deceived. The double contract was activated, and Jared's body became property. Another person, the inventory also became the property of another person. A player named Jared now has the right to dispose of Nick Collins's body. But the goblin lord was very mistaken. He was not the only one who took care of everything in advance. Something terrible began to happen. Shards of the ceiling began to fall to the floor. False Jared was in a panic. And these are Nick Collins's guarantees. Ghosts began to fly into the room. One of the specters has put a sword to the throat of the head merchant. He is not the only one who knows how to play a double game. As soon as the false Jared pronounced Luther's name, the third-rank goblin dealt with the ghost. Did the guest really hope to cope with Luther with the help of a pathetic spectrum? The head merchant gave the order to the goblin to finish everyone off, and he also involved his other subordinates. Harley and Orson arrived just in time, and their plan worked perfectly. False Jared was furious. He activated the double contract. The schoolboy's body began to light up. But the chain on Nick's arm broke. He felt fine. The goblin lord was at a loss. False Jack could not understand how the boy got rid of the contract, but Collins replied that the contract simply evaporated. Although Jared is just a fake, in his place, Nick would worry about something else. The ward of the head merchant destroyed all the ghosts, thereby summoning her. Next to false Jared is the harbinger of death, the mother of the specters, a.k.a. the Banshee. The prison guard was lying on the floor. He got a good hit on the head from the guy. Cadence couldn't wait forever for the goblin to come to his senses. It was time to answer the questions if he didn't want to be left without horns altogether. To begin with, Cook found out where the contracts were stored. They were in Mr. Jared's possession. The goblin reveals that he is actually a player, but he has been tricked into becoming a goblin and has no choice but to obey orders because of Jared's hat. However, Cadence knew this. He defeated the goblin, a second-class guard, and went on. Now you need to hurry up to help the others deal with the goblin lord. Banshee looked very threatening. She was a ghost who came from hell. Her special skill was howling. The guys heard different voices, probably the screams of dead people, so the boss disorients the enemies. This ghost came in handy from the row as an ally, but suddenly the screams stopped. It turns out that the false Jared is able to subdue even such ghosts. The squad made a mistake. On orders, Luther rushed into battle with the Banshee, an incredible shockwave. Collins even had to use the barrier. The other goblins could not withstand the shockwave. It was good that the party was able to stop it with the help of a barrier. It seems that the team can't even get involved in this fight, unless it's his help. Towers called Luther a king without a kingdom. As it turned out, the ghost boss is very fast and able to block many of his attacks. At this rate, she would easily defeat him. Suddenly, the chain of the Goblin King was broken. False Jared shouted to the goblin that he was a pathetic degenerate. He should fight better, otherwise the Banshee would win. The master ordered Luther to protect him, so the goblin chained the Banshee and threw it aside. The ghost boss was defeated after False Jared ordered Luther to swear allegiance. Looking at the broken chain, the Goblin King headed towards the guys. The Lord ordered to finish them off. The gamer opened fire with a revolver on the monster, but it regenerates too quickly. Emily's level is not enough. As soon as Luther was about to attack the boys, his hand fell to the floor, cut off by someone. Cadence managed to protect his squad in time. His comrades were happy to see the #1 ranker. Cook hoped that the Banshee would be able to at least put pressure on the goblin. There was something interesting lying there. The main character returned the robe to its owner and rushed to his goal. The Goblin King fights well even without an arm. That's really the power of a rank 3 goblin. The detective suggested leaving the king to Cadence. He would undoubtedly cope. We need to deal with double contracts. Nick Collins opened his inventory and took the sheets. These are the contracts. False Jared did not understand how his items ended up in the possession of the real Jared, nor did he understand how the schoolboy outwitted the merchant. Angel Earring, anyone who dares to lie in front of the owner, is displaying his lies against himself. The player Nick Collins has the right to dispose of Jared's belongings and body. A chain appeared on the wrist of the false Jared. The boy showed the contract to his accomplice. Now all his belongings and even his body belong to Nick, which he is so surprised at. After all, it is written in the contract. Now the false Jared has become Nick's slave, which means that the hat that controls the goblins no longer belongs to the accomplice. The schoolboy took the hat from the head of the former goblin lord. Now the criminal is deprived of all his trump cards. Collins wondered what Jared's accomplice would throw out this time, and he was furious. False Jared ordered his worthless bastards to move and kill the guests. Francis asked Nick to put on his hat as soon as possible and become the Goblin King, but this is impossible. Already existing goblins obey their original master. They are connected to him by souls. But there is one way out. It is to defeat Luther. Then the goblins will stop obeying the false Jared. The Goblin King is too strong. He knocked Cadence into the wall with one blow. The strongest monster of the D-class, Cook is obliged to defeat him, despite the fact that he is not an opponent for the goblin. Maybe it will work. If you try to knock down the goblin boss, you have to try. Collins shouted to his companion that he had the hat that controlled the goblins. If you knock down a monster, it will become the Goblin King itself, and no one will be able to control it. False Jared sneered. Does the guy really think that he can defeat a D-rank monster with the help of this stick? Luther has received an order to destroy the annoying enemy. The goblin is ready to carry out the order of his master. The goblin boss was preparing to attack the man, while Cadence prepared the Banshee's ghost scythe. The monster's blow was stronger than the main character could resist, so he activated the dragon's eye. Now he can see the chains that are chained to the boss's soul. All that remains is to cut them. The goblin was too heavy for the character. He still won't be able to fight the boss for a long time. With such a strong opponent, you need to hit a specific point. Here you will need an accurate shooter. Emily Gibbs was at the ready. She shot directly into the head of the goblin leader. False Jared began to laugh. The humans seriously hope that they can defeat such a powerful enemy with one bullet. At this moment, the criminal's body flew into the air by itself. The new owner controls the player's body, Jared. The head of the goblins was walking straight at Emily, but there was a master in his way. The monster hesitated. The best moment to break the chains that keep the boss out of his will. False Jared demanded that his subordinate finish off the guests, but he did not move. Now the contract with the monster is not valid. After activating the dragon's eye, the main character broke the chains. Therefore, the main target of the Goblin King was the former master, who deprived the boss of his freedom. As a goblin, he swore allegiance to the king. He had to unquestioningly follow any orders. However, this natural connection caused a lot of pain. Now the false Jared is not a king. Finally, the head goblin was free. His roar was enough to bring the others to their knees. The monster killed its former master with particular cruelty. He had long dreamed of it. Now it was Cadence's turn, but he asked to slow down. Why should the opponents waste energy? There was no point in them fighting. This alignment did not suit the goblin leader. His only desire was to kill. Cook had no choice but to put on a goblin hat. He received the title of Goblin King. The guy asked for forgiveness to the monster, but there was no other way. The goblin himself did not agree to a truce. Something didn't go according to plan. The hat seemed to stop working. The goblin did not obey. Cadence activated the dragon's eye. There is something in the goblin's body that prevents the exchange from obeying. The goblin boss has completely gone crazy. Something terrible is about to happen. The monster's severed arm was restored. It became even stronger than it was before. The goblin struck with such force that the shockwave knocked the guys off their feet. They were terrified by this force. After that, the monster took its former owner, who was breathing with the last of his strength, and devoured him. An error warning popped up. The system checks the status of the problem. The boss began to smash everything around. He hit with such force that all the players were thrown into the air. After calming down, the monster stood up. It seemed that a real Goblin King had appeared. A notification popped up, and a new boss appeared. At this time, 2 people got into the luggage compartment. They were surprised how little was stored here only for a week. They were surprised at how easy the task was. Even the goblins were not around. They had to hurry anyway. They are from the intelligence service. The Ark is in crisis. There is no time to think. Unexpectedly for themselves, the scouts found the surviving people. 2 realized that Jared was engaged in human trafficking. However, they did not have time to save the survivors. They cannot waste a precious resource in such a dangerous place. However, it was too late to escape. The scouts became victims of an angry boss. The boss does not even pay attention to the squad. He is busy with his own business. It seems that the Goblin King was able to evolve. This is clear from the system alert. Now he is C-class. The detective was sure that this was impossible. It was impossible to evolve into a boss without leaving the dungeon. Cadence wondered if it was theoretically possible. No one had ever achieved this in the first Dream World. Common sense clearly does not work here. The system generally identified what happened as an error. Either way, the goblin is now a trigger that the team has already faced. Although he was able to evolve, he has completely lost his mind and only moves to achieve his desires. And he has only one desire. It is to become as strong as possible. While the end is not enough to level, but the boss is clearly from the rank. He is not a carrier of the virus that causes diseases and increases the number of triggers. In the first part, there was research related to achieving evolution for different types of characters when interacting with disputes, but it all ended in failure. But now they are not in the first Dream World, but in the second. Perhaps other changes were applied for it that were not in the first part. A strange glow in the neck area alarms the main character the most. Francis said that it was useless for him to fight against the boss while he was in this guise. However, there is something else that can help win this battle. Cadence spilled his blood on the goblin's hat, and she activated one of her demon abilities. The guy began to look like a real demon. My appearance changed. If you want to catch a monster, you have no choice but to become a monster yourself. The owner of a hat with this ability can control souls. Depending on the number of souls used, the size and strength are determined. It's like using souls as a shield. Maybe there are those children among those souls. Cadence took Virgil's Blade of Regret, as expected. It can be used with a demon skill, especially since the sword belonged to the undead. The detective was worried about his friend. He asked how he was feeling, but Cook asked to move away so that the souls of his comrades would not be sucked in. The level of a demon will differ depending on how many souls it controls, and this one has clearly absorbed a lot. However, he collected them all against his will. The ability itself appeared from behind the goblin hat. It's time to end this once and for all. Cadence bravely rushed into battle. The main character was able to cut off the hand of the goblin boss. The fight will be difficult. Goosebumps ran down the guy's spine. He needed to find the monster's weak points as soon as possible and kill him. Scouts peeked out of the hole in the roof of the train. They were surprised by what they saw. They didn't expect the hero to be human. They don't understand what's going on at all. There is no time for talking. Cook advised to run away if people want to stay alive. The character lost his vigilance. He spent too much time talking. The boss managed to come up from behind. It is not surprising that the monster wants to devour the main character as soon as possible, because he has so many souls in store. Cadence activated the dragon's eye. That thing on his neck was bothering him, probably because of it. With difficulty, avoiding the boss's attacks, Cook reached the neck and tried to cut it. A flower of the dungeon crawled out of the wound, and then things got more interesting. Just think, someone thought of planting a dungeon flower on a monster. Taking a closer look, the guy realized that these were not the harmless flowers that the team had encountered before. A virus must be involved in this, which accelerates the process of evolution of the object. People from the company are clearly involved in this. The flower is at the center of Luther's life force. It's time to shorten the boss. He is too tall. The guy tried to cut off his legs. The exclusive ability of the Blade of Regret is the Needle Frost. It is no longer possible to use the demon. It's time to finish with the monster. Cadence was very tired, whether he would be able to finish the fight. Then Gibbs came to the rescue. The girl decided to roast the enemy. She hit the target clearly, namely the flower. Now the goblin is caught. You need to come more effort. Souls began to leave Luther. They got out of control only because Cook hit the center point. The character, on the contrary, tried to make the souls weaken. He clearly did not expect such an effect. If there are too many drive souls, they may begin to try to find a vessel for themselves, as the undead themselves are known to instinctively attack humans. This can lead to a bloodbath. There is not much time left. We need to subdue the souls. Because of the recent battle, the guy had lost a lot of strength, and he wasn't even a goblin. Then the main character caught the eye of a goblin of the third category. Goblins are one race that can control souls. This hat is designed to allow goblins to evolve into a demon, a risky plan. After all, if a goblin fully evolves, then it will be impossible to stop him. So be it, let the Goblin King lose weight. The main thing is that he calms these souls. There was a strange sound. It seemed to be goblins. They began to hunt their own people. To think of eating so many souls because of the desire to become stronger. All eyes are ordered to the Goblin Hat. These monsters used to send souls to the country world. However, each of them wanted to become stronger by eating their own brethren over and over again. After all, someone created a Goblin Hat to take control of all this madness. The souls screamed and blamed the Goblin King, but he did not want to be one himself. The king asked to be left alone. The Goblin King didn't want to live any longer, but he heard a plea to appease souls. The goblin's confusion looked around. Looking for a voice, he saw Cook. Finally, people remembered why a hat is needed to stop a monster. A person used the ability of a demon. This man was the real owner of the hat. The goblin was ready to carry out the order. The monster began to consider Cadence its master, the Goblin King. In the train car, the scouts tried to escape from the ill-fated dungeon. People couldn't understand what they were seeing. The monster looked like a boss, the Lizard King, from the class dungeon, C. The scouts did not know what to do. No one answered them. This is the first time the scouts faced such a situation. Sundance stopped. He remembered the words of a man who looked like a monster. The man decided that the best thing to do would be to return to the Ark. Rail was indignant. Shouldn't the scouts at least check if people were alive? Chuck replied that he needed to leave this hellish place as soon as possible. Bug was upset. The ceiling began to crack again, and Sundance ordered to leave if Rail wanted to stay alive. It was too late to run. The ceiling broke. Shrapnel flew directly at the scouts. Chuck gave the order to run while they were alive and still able to escape. Cadence fell lifeless right in front of the people. He was unconscious. Sundance asked Bug to check if the guy who fell from the sky was alive. Immediately, a monster with glowing eyes appeared. He told people to get out of here. The scouts panicked, but then they took a closer look at the monster. The little monster tried to scare strangers away from his loved one. It turned out to be a goblin baby. Riley and Chuck were touched by the clumsy monster. The body of the fake Jared was assembled from small pieces. He had foreseen everything. Even his possible death. The fake Jared remembered Nick and Cadence with bad words. He would never have thought that a third-grade goblin would be so helpless. Perhaps he didn't have enough souls. Fake Jared promised to repay the people who overthrew his power. Let them see the real power of the company. A voice rang out from the hallway. He wanted to know who had allowed the false Jared to act on his own. Looking around, the character did not notice anyone but himself. He was alone in the corridor. The fake Jared's body was forcibly bent. It did not obey the rules of the criminal. Collins stood in front of the false Jared. He greeted his slave. The boy would not let the liar die until he paid off the debt. Fake Jared maliciously asked who the player was, how he dared to touch an employee of the company. Nick did not think long about what to answer. He promised to become a merchant, worse than a liar. Cadence was breaking through the army of souls. If things continued like this, they would devour the guy sooner or later. Suddenly, Cook was in bed, waking up in a cold sweat from a terrible dream. The baby goblin was very worried about the owner. He sat by the bed of the main character for a long time. The guy did not expect to see Luther in such a harmless guise. He vaguely remembered what had happened. The kid brought the owner up to date with the latest events. It turns out that the character lay unconscious for 2 days. Emily was glad to see her friend consciously. The squad had rallied lately. The girl said that the ARC's national intelligence officers saved Cook. Apparently the government is alive. Nick Collins just went there to negotiate. Things are not going well in the ARC. They have a big shortage associated with food. And since they have not been able to clear the dungeon during all this time, now it is one of the largest in the city. In the midst of the conversation, Cadence remembered the survivors. He asked Gibbs what had become of them. The squad has found Riley, but he is very bad. He has been through too much. He needs help. The detective personally decided to take him to the ARC and stay there until he fully recovers. There are still doctors there. Marshman feels guilty for what happened. The rest remained here. There is no other way out yet. We need to gain strength. The baby goblin waited for his master's new orders, and Cook wondered what had happened to the children's souls. The subordinate has saved the desired souls. They are in perfect order, but so far it will not be possible to return them. All the souls inside the hat are mixed, so it is impossible to choose or pull out one, and the goblin spack does not belong to the baby. As long as the master lives, the goblin's hat belongs only to him. Everything is very strange, starting with the fact that being a monster, Luther's name is highlighted in white. Most likely the baby monster lost almost all of his strength while trying to put souls to sleep, so there is no point in giving him a hat. But there is another way out. For this, Cadence needs to have more royal greatness. Nick Collins knows what Luther is talking about. The boy came straight from the ARC. Cook asked what was wrong with Marshman. He decided to stay there for the time being. Riley was in critical condition. Collins was followed by a pseudo-Jared. The guys were surprised that he survived. It seems that they are now tied by an angel earring. Nick tried his best and gave him a very bad contract. There's a reason Jared's every deal is so clean, because of this earring, neither he nor the contractor can lie. The main character wondered if something was wrong here. How could the boy guide him if Jared already had an earring with him then? It was not possible to find out about the company and the scoundrel. He lost his memory. He must have used some kind of drug. It's time for Cook to learn more about royal greatness, what Collins knows about it. Goblin horns are needed. They control souls with the help of horns, just because Nick knows where to get such horns. The squad officially received a request for cooperation from National Intelligence. Not far from here is the location of Bermuda. It is said that the team of ARC players who went there on an expedition went missing. The head of the group, Captain Marlowe Carter, who was involved in an accident, is his most important last message about the Goblin Ball. The Bermuda area is connected to the goblins, and Intelligence asked the team to search the area. If it's true a Goblin Ball, then it can help bring back children's souls. However, it will work if it's made of horns. Cadence hasn't fully understood what greatness it is, but one thing he knows for sure. With this, he will be able to become stronger than he is now. The guy's level has increased because he has passed the D-Class dungeon. Now he can safely use Virgil's Blade of Regret, even if the demon does not work. Bermuda is located in Chamshil at a fair where fun once reigned and children's laughter sounded all day long. At the fair, people who went on an expedition asked the captain to hurry up. Danger was everywhere. Captain Marlowe Carter was running away from lizards. These monsters should not be here. They live only in the ARC. There was no breakthrough in this place, so there are also bosses here, monsters, orcs, and all sorts of evil spirits. The captain felt bad. His endurance was at 0. He asked his comrade what that thing was called. The guy saw the Goblin Ball only in the first dream world. Most likely, this item is somehow involved in the nightmare that is happening. It is impossible for monsters to carry any equipment that does not fit their characteristics. Steve Elford was concerned about the captain's condition. His life is now in danger. It is more important. We need to think about how to return. The squad would definitely come back. They just had to. Marlowe sincerely believed in it. But they fell into a trap. We had to make sure that no one could enter here. The Cadence squad, having gained strength, left the train, the dungeon. The guys went to clean up a new place. Nick decided to stay in the car and wait for his friends there. He was not very eager to go to that unfortunate place. The main character asked Collins to take care of the rest. This dungeon will remain on him for now. The boss of this dungeon is still a third-tier goblin, and since Baby Luther belongs to Cook, the right to move the dungeon also belongs to him. The squad went on a mission. Emily lit a dark room with her phone. There were no traces of any monsters or people. The atmosphere was creepy. Francis was alarmed by this. Gibbs was glad to have the opportunity to at least finally visit the fair. Hanley was surprised if the girl had never been there. She made her debut at a very young age, so she could only dream of walking in such places in peace. Cadence has already forgotten that Emily is the most famous idol in all of Korea. Absolutely everyone knows her. Finally, the guys reached the right place. Something was somehow too clean here. Did no one else appear here? It seems that Emily and Hanley have completely forgotten that they are in a post-apocalyptic world. They were completely fascinated by the park. It turned out to be huge in size. Their eyes ran in different directions. Even Cadence felt as if he had finally returned to normal life. Happiness did not last long. Suddenly, a familiar sound was heard. It was time to return to reality. The main character activated the dragon's eye. There was a lot of suspicious energy wave around. The merry-go-round started working. The horses began to swing up and down. Music began to play. The squad has taken a state of alert. Monsters are approaching, and there are many of them. Cook took Virgil's blade of regret. A lot of people appeared in the park. They were all happy, as if Dreamworld 2 had never existed. But all of them seemed to be fake. Cheerful music was playing from different sides. This is a real fairy tale world full of hope and romance. The girl was at a loss. She did not understand what was happening. Cadence was also at a loss. Suddenly, the fans recognized Gibbs. A crowd quickly gathered around the guys. They were not supposed to attract attention. Cadence used a smoke grenade. He must quickly hide from people and hide. Hiding in the smoke, the guys managed to escape from unnecessary glances. Something was unclean here. So the squad attracts too much attention. You need to dissolve in the crowd and change your appearance. The team came across a school uniform store. How long it had been since they had worn these backgammon. The baby goblin found nothing better than to put a towel on his head to hide his horns. He picked it up to match the color of his skin. But Francis did not want to change clothes. He loves attention and feels comfortable in his equipment. Now that the squad doesn't get much attention, you can look around. Luther noticed a tall tower. He didn't think that people were so great. The main character sat down on a bench. He could not even think that the fair was so big. Emily was sad. It seemed as if nothing had happened. She missed ordinary life. Nice music is playing. People are rejoicing as if everything that happened is just a bad dream. And now they are back in reality. While Gibbs was thinking about life and the huge changes in it, the girl was handed something. She looked at the ticket she had just been given, and looking more closely, she noticed something. It was published last year. The date of 2022 was on the ticket. Could it be that the guys got into the past? Emily decided to check the date on the phone. No, they didn't come back. Just the place itself points to a certain moment in the past. It's all an illusion, like a breath of air that was so necessary, but it caused a lot of pain and regret. Gibbs was sorry that all this was really long gone. It was unlikely that the world would ever be able to become the same. Emily decided to take a selfie with Cadence, who would otherwise never have existed. The photo turned out to be quite cute. The girl will remember this magical moment for a long time. Although this is an illusion, it turned out beautifully. At least one photo should be there. She is now so unlike herself, neither like the idol that performs on stage nor like a magical shooter. The guys again lost their vigilance. The costumes did not save them. The singer's fans still recognize their idol. Caught again, now the team needs to hide somewhere inconspicuous again. Due to the large number of people, Hanley and Baby Luther lagged behind Cadence with Emily. They had to fight their way through the crowd to catch up with their comrades. They needed to find a quieter place. The guys didn't understand anything about what was happening. The illusion was too good to be destroyed, but it was time to figure out why everything was so. After analyzing the situation with the help of the Dragon's Eye, Cook saw a Ferris wheel in the cabin he could hide for a while. Hiding from prying eyes, the squad began to think, this place does not look like a dungeon. Moreover, it looks too real. Moreover, it is much more reasonable than what has been happening in recent months. It was all confusing, and Emily wondered where they might have ended up then. This park is perfect for a themed dungeon. The main character also thought so, but when the squad entered the park, no one received a notification about the entrance to the dungeon. Cadence felt uncomfortable. He criticized the thoughts of his friends, but he can't come up with anything reasonable himself. Worst of all is the thought that this place is not real. The world has become too cruel. Millions of people have died, and everything in the park is as before. Moreover, Glenn drools from the fantastic smell reigning around. He rejoices at the perfectly cooked dishes nearby. And when the animal behaves like this, it means that there is a dungeon somewhere nearby. But the system says the smell is everywhere. It's even more confusing. Everyone's brains are already boiling. We will have to comb the park again in search of new leads, since the squad did not find anything last time. Finally, a good idea came to the character's head. He suggested acting differently. Since this is an illusion of reality, then you need to play it by its rules. Namely, Emily needs to do what she can do best. There is a stage, a crowd of people and fans. What else do you need for a famous idol? Gibbs did not like the idea of arranging a concert very much. It seemed completely unreasonable to her. While the team was looking around last time, Cook noticed several strange energy flows. But as soon as the guy came closer, they disappeared. So we need to attract streams here. There are no other options yet. During this time, Francis and the baby finished with the scene. Emily had a condition: if the team was going to give a concert, then everything had to be at the highest level. Although this is an illusion, the people here believe that everything is real. Cadence liked this approach. He knows Gibbs well as a shooter. Now he has the opportunity to get to know her as an idol. Smoke appeared on the stage. A spectacular performance began. The idol is ready to give her concert. What was happening on stage instantly attracted the attention of the audience. The characters recognized the motifs of Gibbs's song. People began to whisper. Someone told what they saw Emily in the park today. Then the idol came on stage. The girl missed the stage. She was glad of such a sudden opportunity. The crowd of fans began to shout the name of the idol. Gibbs felt at ease. All the people from the park came closer to the stage. A large crowd of people formed. As everyone began to sing, it is immediately clear that the most famous singer is performing. Even Francis began to unwittingly sing along to the songs of his colleague. He was glad to attend her concert. It's time to work. The main character has activated the Dragon's Eye. He needs to find the cause of all these oddities. It is impossible that Emily is the only one trying. The girl is clearly worried, despite the fact that the performance is not real. And here are the streams of energy. As the guy expected, they appeared with a large flow of people. Looking closely at the crowd, Cadence noticed that streams of energy were accumulated around large plush toys. These toys were both at the entrance to the park and on the merry-go-round. Then the character did not focus on this. They always appeared exactly where people gathered at the sight of Gibbs. Maybe they don't like this attention. The main character warned his comrades that the enemies are close. The toys took out their weapons. They purposefully went to the members of the squad. A toy in the form of a dog walked and whispered under its breath that the guests should ride the rides. The behavior of the guests in their unauthorized concert infuriated the monsters. The guy should not interfere with their work. Cadence did not allow the monster to attack his comrade in arms. He effectively struck the monster. The guy asked not to interfere with the performance of the most famous singer in Korea. This alignment did not suit the opponents. They intended to eliminate the violators. A teddy bear prepared to attack the idol's guard. The character was looking forward to the battle. Suddenly, the same sentence began to repeat throughout the park. It seemed to stuck. Welcome to the fair, welcome to the fair, welcome to the fair. Over time, the announcement began to repeat itself intermittently. People began to disappear. The sweet illusion melted before our eyes. The sky darkened around. The world lost its colors. The squad returned to the harsh reality. Emily was angry. Whoever was behind it, it was too cruel a pseudo-reality. The calm before the storm was over, and it was unpleasant to return to the second dream world. A bunch of monsters rushed ahead of the squad, some of them surprisingly in armor. Cook has taken out his blade of Virgil's regret. It's time to send these monsters into oblivion. The commander of the squad asked the guys to be careful with monsters. It is not known what they are capable of. The team got into the thematic dungeon of the monster party. Now things are much more real. The dungeon wishes the guests a fun and happy day. This is not the kind of entertainment the squad wanted. Cadence doubted whether this was really a dungeon. The events that had happened were too strange. All this must have a reason to explain all these oddities that do not obey logic. Activating the dragon's eye, the captain noticed a plush hair behind the crowd of monsters, which meant that the toys had not disappeared. The hare was holding something strange in his hands. Perhaps it was the goblin ball that the team had come here for. As soon as the enemy noticed Cook's gaze, he immediately began to run. The guy rushed in pursuit. You can't let the hare hide in such a large park, otherwise the task will be delayed. Caden's plans were interrupted by Hanley, who could not cope with the monster bull and asked the captain for help. Little Luther was also not quite able to cope with so many monsters. His strength was not enough. Even for a magical shooter, there were too many enemies. The team needed its leader. The protagonist was at a loss. His goal was so close, but he can't leave his friends. There was no choice. This time Cook let the hare escape, but it would not last long. He will still have time to deal with the enemy. The guy cannot let his people down. The Ark, Area 3, 2 guards with weapons are on duty. They are guarding the peace of the city. An unknown person approached the gate. The guards armed themselves. It is not known who brought here this time. An unknown man in armor of good quality, the people from the Ark asked the newcomer to name him. The exhausted guy from Marlowe Carter's company introduced himself as Elroy Fisher. The guards immediately contacted Charles Levin, who was surprised to learn that someone had returned alive from Bermuda. The captain interrogated the survivor about how he managed to escape and what happened to the rest of the squad. Elor explained that he had managed to reach the Ark by moving through space, while the others were still locked up. The fair, located in the Bermuda Zone, as expected, turned out to be a huge trap. The group managed to find traces of the dungeon. According to the team, it is no less than the rank AD. Charles asked if the guy was sure. Fisher was sure that perhaps the dungeon was of a rank at all. C, reinforcements were needed. There was no place for high-level players there. According to the guy, everything that happens at the fair is somehow related to memory. The higher the player's level, the more toxic his memories became. The captain could not believe what he had heard. Levin miscalculated badly. He has already sent reinforcements there, but the players are high level. About an hour ago, people from the company approached the aisle of the fair. They had their own plans for this place. This place has never turned into a dungeon, although such attractions are perfect for this. Gordon Taft, the commander of the third group, was hunting for Carl. He was not sure if the guy had come here. However, his subordinate is confident in the data. Carl's squad has captured the ghost train and arrived here. Taft would be at a loss as to what they were thinking. This place is called Bermuda, and people often disappear here. Not much is known about this zone because no one came back alive to tell. This is where Carl went. He clearly knows something. The Bermuda area existed in the first dream world. Gordon has hope that here lies the source of the great power he is so chasing. The third group is sure that they must protect him from Carl at all costs. The squad confidently ran through the gates of the fair. They had no idea what awaited them ahead. Taft was ready for any monsters, but he was clearly not ready for what was hiding behind the gates. Players were speechless. They did not expect to see the ordinary world with its bright colors. Carefree children were running around the park. Their tender and innocent world had not yet collapsed. Gordon could not believe what was happening. The man's subjects opened their mouths in surprise. People could not understand what kind of place it was. Everything here was completely different, untouched, real. The group commander held his breath. He did not think about the fact that he could miss the ordinary world. Those buildings at the entrance outside the fair looked completely abandoned, but here everything is as if nothing happened. Taft has ordered the group to follow him. He intends to deal with what is wrong with this place. In such costumes, the squad attracted too much attention from others. The players heard familiar tunes. It was Emily's concert. Gordon made sure that Cadence was here. They rushed to the stage. The people from the company are obliged to stop Carl before he gets power. Before the group had time to run to the stage, the colors of the illusory world spread away, and an endless night fell. What was happening made me think, but there was no time to think about it. The place was still too strange. Before Taft had time to come up with a plan of action, A huge wolf pounced on the commander. Coming to his senses, Gordon took control of his emotions and dodged the blow. The commander took up arms. The red player killed the monster in cold blood, with a blow directly to the head. You can't let your guard down. There were too many monsters. They came out of nowhere. We will have to fight. The captain ordered the group to prepare for battle. They are waiting for difficult battles with monsters. Taft was about to fight when he saw Carl. He wanted to meet him so much, and then this long-awaited moment came. Gordon hadn't expected to see his target in such a guise. There was something demonic about it. The Gibbs fought bravely against a huge pile of monsters. The magical shooter did a great job. Little Luther remarked that Mr. Cook would meet with people who clearly did not come to the rescue. A second-class goblin was nearby. He greatly angered Luther, who wanted to protect his master with all his heart. As soon as this impudent man dared to go against his king, the Lord of the Goblins, the monster was not going to sign in front of the baby. He just threw his hammer at Luther. The third-rank goblin could not cope with the blow. The kid flew several meters away and fell on his back. Luther couldn't believe that some snarl could defeat him. It was unacceptable. All goblins had to obey him. Hanley could not allow his friend to be injured by anyone. He grabbed the baby and ran to the side. Luther was unhappy with the rescue. He demanded revenge. Francis explained that the monster would smash the mini-goblin with one left. The kid was furious that he, a third-class goblin, would be whipped by a second-rate goblin. He demanded that the leather put him on the ground. Suddenly, a giant monster appeared in front of Harley. It looked quite threatening. Francis was waiting for the monster to attack. He is not a coward to run away from danger. The guy should have thought better about his decision. He would not be able to withstand such a strong monster. Emily, seeing his comrade's hesitation, ordered him to run away. Harley resisted at first, but Luther wanted to live in this world longer. Francis was surprised at the mini-goblin's desire to run away. He had just been eager to fight. Luther explained that now he was not as good at fighting as he used to be. Most likely Cook was right. While the third-grade goblin tried to control all souls, he lost his powers. However, Luther did not regret this, because he was following the orders of his goblin king. There was something wrong with Cadence. Francis sensed something was wrong in this situation. The main character activated the demon, but this time he is a little different, as if it is not Cook. In this form, no monsters are scary next to Cadence, but then the guy tried to strike at Harley and Luther. The behavior of the commander frightened the guys, as if he was really becoming a monster. Harley could not believe that Cook did not recognize his comrades and pointed a sword at them. The energy of a leader is different from usual. Francis could not understand anything. Maybe he did something wrong. Then something strange happened. Another Cadence appeared. The real one. He fought off the guys from the fake Cook. The real commander asked the guys if they were okay. Luther did not understand anything. There are now two kings who can be trusted. Cadence asked Luther to use a skill to verify that he was real and not fake. The kid activated the title of Goblin King, identifying the real one. He wondered who the second player who activated the demon was. It was a good question. Unfortunately, the main character did not know the answer to it. He does not fully understand what is happening. Cook asked the guys to get ready. They would have to act quickly. The fake commander was preparing for an attack. Cadence activated the dragon's eye to assess the situation. He noticed a crack. The main character used the skill of Spiny Frost and rushed to attack against himself. The fake Carl shattered into pieces, but this was clearly not the end. You can't let your guard down. The team had a moment of calm. You can exhale a little. They hardly have much time. The squad had a hard time. There were too many monsters. This place was teeming with oddities. Francis noted that it got dark too quickly, and the monsters were more active at night. Gibbs decided that it was better than fighting a whole horde. The team was bothered by Cook's clone. They looked like two peas in a pod, just one face. Ranker suggested that it was all because of a magical object, the Goblin Ball. Those toys were related to oddities. After all, those incomprehensible waves began precisely because of the thing with which the rabbit walked. Apparently, you need to find the culprit and take away the Goblin Ball. You can't trust anything you see here. Most likely, all the monsters are just an illusion, just like those people in the afternoon, along with the whole holiday at the fair. Cadence realized that the reason all the illusions appeared was because of the memories of the squad members. After the party disembarks from the ghost train, Cook no longer transforms into a demon. So none of the people here could know that the player was once one, but the members of the squad remember this. It is quite possible that this object somehow affects the memory of those present, changing the local reality. But there was one thing Cadence could not understand: for what reason the memories of the demon were singled out. At first the illusions were pleasant, in the form of a holiday at the fair, and then nightmares began, all too real, up to a complete copy of the rancor. Then Cook decided to find out how the guys liked the image of the demon, what they thought about it. It was then that the clues appeared. Harley and Emily thought it was amazing and even delightful. Luther thought the appearance was a little scary. That's the whole point. The emotion that makes it easy for anyone to drag a monster into reality is horror. Everyone is afraid of something different, and that's how all these monsters appeared in such a large number. And a copy of Cadence in the guise of a demon appeared as an object of fear from Luther's memories. Suddenly it dawned on the main character: what if there are monsters that he is afraid of? What will happen then? Could it be that Dragon from the tomb would soon incarnate in a dungeon of rank Z? And besides, Captain Carter must be here somewhere. Otherwise, the boys wouldn't be able to recognize the Goblin Ball. In short, the squad must find two things in this strange place: the captain and the Goblin Ball. The squad was distracted and did not notice the attack on the players. Something fell right between Cadence and Emily. A huge centipede towered over the guys, an angry monster. The insect dreamed of snacking on people. Harley was in a panic. He screamed in terror. Apparently it was his nightmare. Strange that such a fearless player is afraid of insects. Francis was unable to fight. The group needed to cover their comrade and finish off the monster. Gibbs decided to deal with the centipede. Such creatures do not scare her. It is a pity that no one has an insect spray with them. The weak point of the monster is the palate. You need to get closer to hit the target clearly. Choosing a comfortable place, the magical shooter discharged the entire clip into a centipede. The girl made many holes in the monster's sky. She did her job perfectly. The insect fell lifeless to the ground. Cook approached Francis and asked how his comrade was feeling. As a child, every time Harley's father scolded, he wrote down his son in a box, and these creatures were constantly crawling there. Cadence was perplexed by this story. He would never have thought that Francis's father could have filmed such treatment. There was no time to regret the past. Cook's thoughts were interrupted by Emily. Because of all this fuss, various monsters began to flock here. The squad is doing badly. The commander ordered the guys to prepare their weapons. The battle would not be easy. Francis heard a strange sound behind him. He looked back. What he saw left much to be desired. There was another monster. All the team members looked back to look at the monster. There was an aristocrat named Nozel. He wasn't a gambler. This monster is here because of Gibbs. The girl hated this character because he strongly reminded her of one stalker. Apparently, not only monsters can appear, but also the embodiment of other nightmares. The aristocrat drew his sword, preparing to attack the guys. Emily was uncomfortable with such an opponent. Cadence, looking at his friend, decided to take Nozel on himself. He was not afraid of this monster. Gibbs warned that an aristocrat of the 200th level, if not higher, the main character did not care about this. Cook came face to face with his opponent. Nozel tried to strike at the guy, but the hero dodged. The 200th level means that it is even interesting for the commander, a great opportunity to gain a lot of experience. The enemy is strong. It is even difficult for him to inflict damage. He is agile and easily dodges attacks, and what if he cannot be defeated? However, sometime later, Nozel made a fatal mistake, inflicting another blow on Cuckoo. The enemy has opened up, and the main character has the opportunity to strike the aristocrat right in the heart. Nozel was defeated in an instant. Gibbs can breathe a sigh of relief. It's time to deal with the others. Just as the crew was about to go in search of Commander Marlowe, Emily spotted a rabbit. The attacker was standing on a high elevation. He was clearly a red player, and he had his own game. Cadence activated the calmness skill. This time the criminal will not leave the guy. The main character could not allow the rabbit to escape this time. He cannot run forever. The guy intends to get the Goblin Ball. Surprisingly, the opponent was not very fast. Cadence managed to grab the rabbit by the ear. Cook made an unexpected step for the enemy. He simply decided to throw the enemy down, depriving him of support under his feet. The guy did not expect that the ball would fly down with the rabbit. Cook would not have time to save the ball from destruction. Harley was on the sidelines. He rushed to save the fragile, valuable object. Francis coped with his task and did not let the Goblin Ball fall to the ground and crash. However, a small pebble prevented the final victory. The player lost his balance and the ball was snatched from his hands. A bear appeared out of nowhere and intercepted the ball from the guy's hands. All this began to resemble catch-up. It was necessary to find out who these people were and what goals they were pursuing. Cadence ran after the bear on the roof. Ranker did not have time to detect the danger in time, and the roof under his feet collapsed. He lost his balance. And then he appeared, the owner of the dungeon level, Z, level 500. Cook planned to get the ball before it appeared. Despite all the horror from this monster, Cadence has no time to panic, only he can cope with the dragon. A clown began to laugh from the darkness. A guest appeared. Clowns are always not good. No one likes clowns. Boss Velazar, the protagonist, was expecting to meet him, so this meeting was not a surprise. The guys were terrified of Cadence's nightmare. Compared to the dragon, their fears were still flowers. The commander ordered the team to leave as quickly as possible. He would buy time for the guys. Francis did not want to leave. The boss of the 500 level was already behind and was preparing to devour the main character, Emily screamed. Thanks to the girl's warning, Cook managed to jump away from the monster. The shockwave threw the guy several meters. The attack was so strong that even the squad flew into the air. Now everyone is afraid of Cook's nightmare. Harley got the most, but he was still able to fight. Gibbs was worried about Cadence. The ranker had no choice but to take on the form of a demon, or else he would not be victorious. That's what the members of the squad thought. But as it turned out, it was a copy of Cook. The situation became much more interesting. The clone was an exact copy of the guy. He seemed to be looking in the mirror it could not but admire. Apparently, the second Cadence was strongly opposed to the dragon Velazar. This is a real hope for success. The monster's attacks were terrifying. Their resolving power terrified everyone present. If the boss hits the guys, then a pile of ashes will remain of them. Copy Cook fought with dignity against a monster of the 500th level. The squad had to watch from the sidelines. Little Luther was delighted with the former power of his beloved master. He could not believe that this was his majesty in the past. Francis could not understand why the enemy stood up against another enemy. The guy did not understand what was happening. Someone must have summoned this character. There is someone here who is more afraid of Velazar than the main character. It seems that the monster is unable to use all its power. That is, it is now hitting half-heartedly. If Harley had met the real Velazar, he would have been lying down just by looking at him. But his skills are the same. The dragon uses the endless flame of death, black smoke. This means that the characteristics of the weapon with which you can cope with the boss remain the same. And since Carl doesn't have such a weapon, he lost this fight in fact. And this beast somehow finished off Cook, because he was without the right weapons. But if Carl couldn't win, he would at least last for time. And now the party must find the goblin ball before it is too late. This is the most opportune moment. The enemy may think that the team is busy fighting a monster. There is no time to lose. Monsters standing in the way were almost harmless. The main character cut them on the run. The captain asked the guys to be careful. Then real hardcore can begin. An illusory Carl stood in front of the squad. But he is everywhere, apparently. This is a second copy to stop the group. And that's not all. The first Carl Velazar made too much noise. More monsters will arrive here now. Clearing this place turned out to be more difficult in every sense than conquering the dungeon train. It seems that Carl has become even stronger than when they first met. Apparently, he has eaten several souls during this time. Emily hinted to Cadence that it was time for the guy to teach a lesson to his pathetic copy. The player did not get the hint. The girl said bluntly that the ranker must also become a demon in order to equalize the forces. The others supported Gibbs's idea, demanding that the commander take his strongest form. Everything turned out to be not so simple. A demon is a skill for using the soul. Now there are children around who can suffer. The main character was faced with a difficult choice. The enemy is very strong, but innocent people may suffer. Gibbs began to press the captain. There was no time to think. There must be another way out. Cook decided not to endanger the children. He could not do this to them. The commander rushed into battle with the opponents. Emily was disappointed with Cadence's choice. Suddenly, the battle was interrupted by a bright light that illuminated everything in the area. The main character stopped. It was a green machine that knocked down all the monsters in its path. The car stopped right in front of the guy. Cook was perplexed. The very idea of what was happening was crazy. The driver was Captain Carter from the Ark. It was his team who came to rescue, It turned out strangely as a result. The captain himself saved the guys who were trapped by monsters. Cadence thanked Marlowe for saving him. He came just in time. The headlights frightened the monsters, but the monsters do not tolerate sunlight, not just electricity. Carter had spotted the squad in the afternoon, but he couldn't drive up because he was looking for the light. The Jeep effectively coped with crowds of monsters. Just think, since the release of Dreamworld, many have forgotten about cars. At first, the captain saw Emily. He was pleasantly surprised. The fact that the guys gave a concert amused Marlowe. Harley's sudden driving made him sick. He tried to switch to make him feel better. The man said that he tried all night. The dialogue was interrupted by a knife that was plunged into the roof of the car. As it turned out, not all monsters are afraid of sunlight. This greatly complicated the course of events. As expected, this is a double. Even a shot from a pistol endured calmly. Cadence tore open the car door and jumped onto Carl's roof. The main character decided to deal with the copy once and for all. Carl decided to pounce on Cook, but the guy grabbed his opponent by the arm and threw him over his shoulder. The copy was at a disadvantage. So far, the player is leading the battle. The fake tried to get up. After recovering from the blow, he looked at his enemy. Cadence wasn't going to pull. He didn't let Carl get up, hitting his face on the roof a couple of times. That's it. The games are over. Now Carl will not prevent people from continuing their mission. Cadence lowered the head of the copy to the lantern with sunlight. The guy wondered what would happen to him. As expected, the light incinerated the enemy. Carl crumbled into pieces and disappeared. The main character, standing on the roof and looking at the receding fair, due to the fight against monsters, some elements were destroyed. Cook decided to take the remaining souls of Carl for himself. The Ranker still hopes to save them. All souls rushed to the player. Now they are safe. They will not be used as a human shield. He waited patiently for every soul to gather, Cook wanting to save as many lives as possible. Now the souls are in good hands. The Ranker does not yet know a way to save people, but he will definitely find it. The captain decided to check how things were and leaned out through the hatch. Cadence replied that he could go further. The team went to a safe place, to a hiding place. It was there that Carter's squad took refuge from this cruel location. People were patiently waiting in the cache. Someone was wounded, but in general, the team has so far managed without losses. Captain Marlowe went into the hiding place. He was glad to see his men. The squad was glad to see their leader alive. The members rushed to Carter. But then Emily Gibbs came into the hiding place. All the men immediately fussed. They brought her a healing potion. Marlowe was amused and asked one of the men if they weren't worried about their captain at all. The guys immediately asked where the reinforcements were and why the players were here at all. Then Carter stood up to defend the guys. He explained that a monster of the Z-class appeared outside. The captain said that Carl and the dragon he summoned fought in a duel like madmen. People were surprised. Could it be that Carl himself had come here, if he was here now? It seems that they really believe that the Carl who is on the outside is the real one. People don't even know about Gibbs's playing personality, okay? That's not the main thing now. Carter stated that this was their chance while Carl fought the dragon Belazar. He shouted that the squad must immediately seize this dungeon. Did they really mean to say that they had found a goblin ball? Cadence thought that the team wanted to escape from this place. Marlowe confirmed Cook's words. They had indeed found the object they needed. Carter led the player to a familiar object. The main character was very surprised by the technology of Carter's team. Did they really think of patrolling the territory? With the help of the drone that is now flying over the fair, the people from the Ark did not erase new technologies from their lives. One could only dream of such a find in the first Dreamworld, but now it can be used. Moreover, the drone can fly outside the fair. The guy informed Marlowe that he was almost there. Cadence was very interested in Carter's team's mission, as he too was hunting for the orb. The drone flew to Laufey's tower. Cook asked if it was possible to fly closer. However, it is impossible to approach the building, since the squad will lose contact with the drones. They seem to be in another world. The dungeon, but it is not like all the others. There are completely different rules. There is no entrance or exit. It looks like just a hole, somewhat even resembles a black hole. Something did not go according to plan. The video became very poor quality. He stopped responding to the guy's commands. The player began to get nervous. The drone began to lose altitude. The guy could not take control of it. Cadence wondered if it could be a monster attack, but the guy didn't think it was an attack. Here a very interesting detail got into the frame, which gave answers to many questions. A human leg, Cook asked if it was possible to see who it was. The drone did just that. The guy was able to raise the camera up. The main character saw familiar figures. The company, maybe they were the ones who summoned the Dark Carl. That would explain a lot. Taft destroyed the drone in one move in the most brutal way possible. The drone was furious. His toy had been destroyed, and now the squad had lost the ability to watch the fair. Emily asked if this dungeon could belong to the company, but it was unlikely. If they had really created this place, Dark Carl would not be here. In any case, this group must be stopped. Red players should not exist in this world. Captain Carter heard a little bit of unnecessary information that he should not have known at this point. Hope slowly faded from Marlowe's eyes. He thought that the company was protected. Carter could not understand who had called whom, whether someone had called Carl. It seems that the time has come for Cadence to tell everything as it is. We need to start from the very beginning. Taft's group didn't want anyone to notice them, but something didn't go according to plan. The captain did not know whose drone they had stumbled upon. Those people had barely escaped from the Dark Carl. Gordon's thoughts were interrupted by one of his subordinates, who pointed out something incomprehensible to the leader. He has seen many portals, but this is the first time a red player has seen this. One thing Taft knows for sure is that here, in this place, all the power of the Bermuda Triangle is concentrated. Such a chance comes only once. If you use it, it may well become their weapon. And what if there were more creatures like Belazar? The red players wouldn't have to be afraid of Carl. Even if something goes wrong, nothing prevents you from blowing up this place. You can make a breakthrough with the help of the Dungeon Flower. The company's mission is to facilitate dungeon breakthroughs by speeding up the transformation of weak dungeons with the Dungeon Flower. But the members of the organization also study them and turn them into weapons against the players. One of these D-class dungeons, the high-speed ghost train, which is the main achievement of the first group. If this works, then Taft will reach the same level as the first group and at the same time earn bonuses. Gordon asked if everyone in the group was ready for promotion. The whole squad shouted in the affirmative. The group was about to go to the portal to enter the dungeon when suddenly, Taft's plans were interrupted by someone, but he was so fast that the squad did not immediately see the enemy. It was a player in a bear costume. People were at a complete loss. The toy character ran into the portal, hiding from the eyes of Taft's team. Gordon was furious. He asked his subordinates why they were up. Very soon Carl would come. The players quickly understood the commander's hint and ran into the dungeon. The portal was left completely empty. All the players went to the dungeon. A huge monster with a big belly stood in the way of the squad. He really wanted to deal with people. Cadence, along with Commander Marlowe, decided to deal with the monsters as quickly as possible. Cook coped with the huge monster in 3 minutes. Carter did not even have time to start. The commander, along with Dylan, were delighted with Carl's power. They did not expect that one day they would encounter the legendary Rancor. Carter approached the main character. He wondered if he still needed to look for the Goblin Ball. If the team didn't know exactly where the dungeon was, then they would have to look for it, and there was no need. There must be a monster in the dungeon itself. If the group successfully raids, it will disappear and the orb will be left without an owner. Then Gibbs had a thought. What if those guys in suits appear just because of a breakthrough of the dungeon and are not really connected with it in any way? Then nothing will happen to him when cleared. The dungeon is too big. Apparently it all happened because of the power that is in it. Harley doubted whether such a thing was even possible, but Cadence had no answer. He only speculated. We must not forget that the guys are in a world where Soul has become a location in the game. If players solve the problem with the dungeon, then they will be able to deal with mass types, fake Carl, and even a dragon. In regular dungeons, you can get a description of the location itself. But here the situation is different. Here, for some reason, everything seems very familiar to the main character. He thought about trying again, but then something strange began to happen. Unthinkable streams of power filled everything around, something very powerful. Cook crouched closer to the ground, the streams of energy swirling in a circle. An unknown force awoke on the territory of the fair. A huge cannibal flower appeared in front of the squad. The monster decided to devour the people who were standing right in front of him. He was very hungry. The Rancor could not allow his men to get hurt. He dealt with the monster in an instant. A new quest appeared. The team was confused. The quest is right here. Quest transformation of the dungeon, category unknown. Parasite appeared in the fair location. If all the conditions are met, the system will create a theme park of the dungeon of the puppeteer Happy. It is necessary to leave the fair where the dungeon is located. It is required to fulfill all the conditions. The reward will be life. The punishment for non-fulfillment, death. Unknown people got out of the ghost train, 3 men and 1 girl. The man thanked for the fact that the man drove the squad to the right place. Jared began to make money on the ghost train, using it as transport. The man was perplexed. The boy was so young, and he had already established a business, seized the dungeon, and now he was driving around in it. The team went about their business. Soon they will enter places where high-ranking players should not be. In addition, no humans have played the first Dream World, and this means that there are no old people with great experience among them. And that's why the squad is here, because their experience is only related to what they were able to cope with on their own. The only problem is that the team doesn't know if those 2 of the best, Carl and the magic shooter, came here. The members of the squad still could not believe that the magic shooter was Emily Gibbs. If they are really invincible, then we can consider that this is a zone of the first class of danger. Strange things awaited help already at the entrance to the fair. The entrance was blocked. It was definitely open before the arrival of the detachment. There was nothing to be done. The entrance was blocked. The team decided to take a different path. People climbed the stairs up. At the exit from the subway, they saw something strange, which clearly complicated the course of the mission. Huge thorny stems were destroying everything around. The monster was everywhere. The oddities did not end there. Belazar flew from above. The squad was not at all happy about the dragon. They had not been warned about such a strong opponent. The guy quickly realized that this creature was about a class Z. The guys were not ready for this. While people were thinking about the dragon, they forgot about other monsters. The danger crept up unnoticed. Lyde grabbed the monster's stems by the leg and lifted him up. The hostage asked the monster to lower him to the ground. The cannibal flower did so. The landing was not soft. The team began to approach Brooks carefully. They did not know if his comrade was alive. People were scared. They didn't understand what the hell was going on. Commander Dauman decided that it was a parasite, like the ones that appeared during the transformation of the dungeon during training. If this place becomes a dungeon, then Soul is finished. We need to solve the problem as soon as possible. However, the members of the rescue team did not even know if there was a way to stop it. At this time, the players were running away from the evil flower, which they wanted to eat human flesh so much. Cadence moved away enough and asked the other participants to move away. Activating the skill of Needle Frost, the main character rushed to attack. He decided to freeze part of the parasite. An area of Bermuda, a place where many people mysteriously disappeared. And everyone apparently was eaten by this creature. The entire territory of this sector was a place where dungeons appeared. Only the players must have suffered from these parasites, as well as the monsters in the fair itself. Now it seems that Cook realized that he was in this tower. The party decided to go straight there. There's something like a greenhouse where these cannibal flowers grow. For this place to turn into a dungeon, it will take a lot of time. Many conditions for this. The squad should still hurry up. They must find the boss monster faster than the types from the company will do. If players can defeat the main monster, then the transformation process will stop. This is the only way to stop the appearance of a new dungeon. Captain Marlowe decided to notice that the guys did not try. Even the rankers are not able to stop a transformation of this magnitude. First, it is worth returning to the Ark. However, players cannot afford this. Cadence is sure that those people from the company will definitely try to speed up the transition with the help of a dungeon flower. We need to go right now. The squad must destroy the dungeon. The ogre flower was too close to Audley. The player already thought that it would be eaten. The magical shooter could not allow the death of one of her comrades. Emily covered the guy by shooting directly into the monster's face. Cadence ran ahead, freezing monsters, thereby clearing the way for his comrades. Next came Francis and Baby Luther, making sure that the remaining stems did not attack the party. After that, everyone else ran. The portal was just a stone's throw away. The main character was at the target. He remained to wait for the others, in case of an attack. Harley decided to go to the dungeon first. Cook asked the guy to be careful. Gibbs was worried about her friend, but the ranker must make sure that everyone in the squad is safe. Finally, Captain Carter was the last to run, now all the comrades in the dungeon. Cadence decided to check if there was anyone left. The fair was filled with cannibalistic flowers. The spiked stalks headed straight for the ranker. wanting to finish him off. It's time for Cook to go to the dungeon and clear it as soon as possible. The guy was happy to say goodbye to the hothouse monster. The player did not like it. A notification popped up informing him that Cadence had discovered the secret greenhouse of the puppeteer Happy. The possession of the goblin hat is confirmed. The main character is led by an unknown stream. Cadence did not understand at all what had happened. This had never happened before when passing portals. Landing on her feet, Emily was puzzled. She found herself on the territory of the same fair. The girl went to look around. It seemed that the team was accidentally moved around the tower. Out of the darkness, an excited little Luther ran towards Gibbs. The goblin was seriously alarmed, and he asked Emily if she had seen the king. The kid demanded an explanation of where His Majesty Cook had gone. The gamer suggested that the ranker was moved to another place. She suggested that the goblin look for Cadence together. Gibbs asked the goblin if he was afraid, which put Luther in an awkward position. The kid is angry, but no matter what the Great One is afraid of something, nothing scares him. Luther behaves like a child, the goblin asked the girl to walk slowly. Emily only now realized that she hadn't really communicated with the baby. Luther was not a monster from the very beginning. The gamer wondered if his memories had returned. The kid muttered under his breath that he was not a monster, but a proud descendant of the Goblin clan. When Emily said that she had never seen monsters become characters, Luther said that he did not remember or know anything. This strange situation made Gibbs think, the kid is asking to find Cook. Maybe Luther has some hidden quest that he seeks to fulfill. Suddenly, the wall in front of the guys flew in different directions. Emily did not know what was happening. Shards of concrete were flying around. The dragon broke through the wall because it sensed people, not the best set of circumstances. Gibbs was seriously frightened. She would not be able to protect herself and Luther from Belisar. Suddenly, the boss of Rank Z acted strangely. His head fell on the concrete floor. After that, the dragon completely disappeared from sight, leaving behind only dust. Apparently, the monster was dealt with by the Dark Carl. This did not make the situation easier. Copy Cadence looked at the girl with soulless eyes. The character is clearly against the guys. There is nothing left but to join the battle. Cook seemed to be telling Emily that Belisar had defeated the Dark Carl. This means that the revolver can easily cope with another copy of the legendary ranker. At this time, Cook was pulling someone's stream. Finally, after a long time of falling, he felt support. The guy found himself in an incomprehensible place. There was only emptiness around. The entire floor, walls, and ceiling are painted white like a drawing sheet. Even the shadow is not reflected. So this place is the kingdom of the game. Suddenly, a voice rang out throughout the space, announcing the arrival of a precious guest. Cook grabbed the blade of regret and ran at the sound, and there was a man in front of him. The main character was confused. The man was happy to meet him. Todd Freeman held out his hand to Cadence to say hello. The ranker did not respond with a handshake, so Todd decided to show one video first. Out of nowhere, a screen appeared. The 2nd of October 2021, the first working day since joining the company. Todd had never been so close to his dream and promised himself to do his best. But life had its own plans. He began to be late on his first day at work. Freeman was very nervous. No matter what he undertook, everything went awry. It was necessary to make 10 copies, and he made 100. On the way home, he was driving at rush hour in the crowd. The next day, Todd arrived at his workplace at dawn. It wasn't really necessary to come so early, but the guy wanted to be the best worker. Cadence found out the date, it seems, just on that day and opened the second dream world. That's right, at 6 o'clock, Freeman entered the location of the fair. The unsuspecting guy was going to work as usual and met Happy, the boss of the dungeon there. Todd did not understand what was happening at all and was numb with fear. The boss immediately finished off the guy. At that moment, his thoughts were only that he had wasted his life on nonsense. However, the goblin ball, for some reason, Pierrot took advantage of it. Thus, the boss resurrected Todd, so the character became a puppet. Freeman had completely lost his memory and could not feel anything because of Jolly's curse. In addition, the boss handed the guy the ball, which saved Todd. The clown ordered to kill all the people who came to the fair and at the same moment quietly disappeared. Welcome to the fair, a world full of hopes and dreams. Have a good time. And after that, people who came here got into the night opening. And the fear that settled in their heads soon turned into monsters that haunted the survivors. But the real tragedy happens only when those who were able to survive finally realize what is going on. They understood the main rule. Every time a new person came and the night shift began, another monster appeared. Because of this, every time someone new appeared, they took their life before dark. The problem is that in the end, they themselves died. Cook asked why the guy was showing him all this. Todd didn't know himself, maybe so that they wouldn't forget about him, maybe to prove that it wasn't his fault. Cadence asked what the guy meant. Freeman replied that they were just the thoughts of a former employee named Todd Freeman. After that, the character took the form of a bear and asked if Cook knew this doll. That is, Todd is the same bear. It turns out that it was he who attacked the squad and escaped with the help of the ball. The doll that the players met was not Freeman at all. We can say that these are just cogs, thanks to which the fair works just perfectly. The main character asked if the dolls are under someone's control. And by the way, only he knows Todd's real thoughts. The guy came to his senses about a month after this place began to look like this. Wandering around the surroundings of the fair, gradually began to understand what had happened. For example, that Todd died and then rose again, but he was only a thought tied to the ball and could do nothing. Every time the boy's memories returned, he dragged himself everywhere, hiding to save the stranded people. But even that never ended well. But Todd was able to understand why day and night do not differ here. Jolly likes to read the story of dark narratives. Apparently, he loves fear-filled moments that lead from a happy day to a terrifying night. Such a strange hobby. It is very pleasant for him to watch how people make extreme choices at the moment when they are struggling with pain. Every day, Freeman could feel all his emotions, which made the guy's hair move all over his body. Todd was able to go through this pain and only came to his senses 2 months later, after which the narrator asked if he correctly understood that Carl was standing in front of him. The guy began to disappear into thin air. Time is short. To get out of the shackles of happy means not to be able to exist even as a thought. Freeman asked Carl to do something, or rather, only he could do it. Since Cook already had a goblin hat, then he would be able to do it. Todd handed Cadence the goblin ball. The protagonist couldn't believe that he was able to get his hands on the ball. Cook took possession of the goblin ball from the thoughts of Todd Freeman. Now the ball belongs to the ranker. He received the title of goblins. He has the right to make a royal engraving. First, you need to become the master of the ball. Then Cadence will be able to manifest his true powers. Freeman warned Mr. Carl that in order to defeat Happy, the artifact must be completely under the player's control. In addition, if you get a chance to fight the boss, you should not close your eyes. You should not even breathe next to him. Finally, Freeman wanted to say something. He began to stutter. The guy's speech became interrupted. He tried to say what would happen in the second dream world. Todd asked Mr. Carl to beware of the regular updates that took place every year, according to the information he received from Happy. Cadence is in the greatest danger. Then Freeman disappeared without finishing the end. The main character was confused. This meeting was very strange. During this time, Emily continued to fight the Dark Carl, the character deftly dodging bullets. The opponent hit right next to the girl, but she managed to jump away. The Dark Carl took out his daggers and decided to use them. Gibbs activated her eagle eye to see the trajectory of the daggers. After that, the girl gracefully dodged all enemy attacks. Then the Dark Carl decided to use the fireball against the guys. Until the end, no one has found out what the dark copy of Cook was doing at all. It's good that at least it's different from the real Cadence. It would cause problems. Apparently, he can't think sensibly, he just acts like a monster. Emily decided to test how invincible her opponent really was. The magic shooter activated the bomb skill and shot the enemy. As it turned out, this maneuver did not cause much damage to the enemy. He did not care. Then Emily activated a fire of magic projectiles. I wonder how the Dark Carl will dodge this. The guy repelled most of the attacks with his sword. It seems that the opponent is stronger than Cadence, but the enemy is still a monster, unlike the real Cook. Although he has the skills of the original, he remains a dummy. Time was up, and Emily snapped her fingers, activating the explosive projectiles. The weeding fell right on the enemy. They not only knocked him down, but also dropped him on the floor below. All that remains of the Dark Carl is a broken sword and a hole in the floor. Having dealt with the fake, the guys went to look for the real Cadence. At this time, the two of them, Dylan and the drone, were running down the corridor of the fair. Someone was hunting for them. It was another copy of Carl. I wonder how many of them are in the dungeon. Captain and Meg ran towards Audley, and Carl ran after them, surprisingly. Apparently, in this dungeon, instead of monsters, there are dark copies of Cook. Dylan asked the captain why their ally was hunting the squad. Carter replied that the monster didn't even look like it. But Marlowe himself said that Charles fought the dragon Belazar. The rancor caught all the monsters at the fair, including that dragon. Apparently now it's time to catch the players. Audley in the darkness saw someone walking toward the team. Emily was up front, but the team wasn't sure if she was really their ally, especially after the girl shot right next to Dylan's head. Audley realized that it was Mrs. Emily Gibbs. If it had been a monster, she would not have missed. The girl hoped that she arrived on time. It was nice to meet someone other than the Dark Carl. Cadence tried to dismantle the goblin ball, namely to take possession of it. It seems like it's time to put a brand on yourself to get more strength. The main character spilled his blood on the goblin ball. Now he is the owner of the item.